Good morning. Welcome to Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the Thursday, 30th of October, 2025. Obviously, I'm Andy Crump. I will be chairing today's meeting. Day before Halloween. So, just checking whether you've got your Halloween costumes ready, and is anybody wearing their trick-and-treat masks? No, I don't think so. So, it's a good sign. So, we'll kick off today as we mean to go on, Councillor Rice? Good man. This is what I'd like to see. So, first item on the agenda, Howard, is apologies, please. Oh, yes. Yes, we've Howard spotted a deliberate mistake, and I was just wondered who was going to be the first to find out, and it's to read out the fire evacuation process. And well done, Howard. You beat all the other councillors to realise I hadn't done it. Fire evacuation. There are no planned fire alarms scheduled at this time. Therefore, should the fire alarm go off, please make your way out of the building via the nearest fire exit to the car park beside the Windmill Public House. And the other item is please ensure that the microphone is directly in front of you, is switched on and logged in. Please don't move the microphone from its set position. And when speaking, please ensure the microphone is directly in front of you and not to the side or high up. It might be a case of do as I say, not as I do on this one, so please tell me if I'm doing it as well. Thank you for that, I'm sure you will. So, thank you for that, Howard. That was worth bringing out that Kit Kat for you to do that. Disclosures of apologies, Howard. Item number 1, please.
Yes, good morning, Chair, good morning, Committee. We have apologies from Councillor Rolfe and Councillor Passing this morning.
Thank you. No substitutes?
No substitutes.
Okay, thank you for that. Went through all that grief and we don't have any. Disclosures of interest, number 2, please. Any items of disclosure of interest? Councillor Keithley, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I've got a disclosure which might be of interest. I have to leave at 12:30.
No problem. Thank you for attending.
Okay.
Just wait when you go in. But hopefully we might be finished by then, if we're lucky. It's a big if. So no other disclosures, thank you. Chair's brief. No items to identify to update the committee on. And public participation, item number 4, I haven't got any notification of that. So thank you very much. So we'll move on to item number 5, which is safe accommodation and refuge. And today we've got some star performers here today from County and Police and Crime Commissioner's Office. No? Oh, you still are now. I couldn't remember where you were. Sorry, Priya. Yeah, she did work with me for many years, but perhaps senility is setting in. In my case, not Priya's, of course. So we've got Councillor Dale Bridgewater, Warwickshire County Council portfolio holder for fire and rescue and community safety. And Priya, do you want to introduce your full title then, please?
Yes, domestic.
Could you put that mic on, please?
Yeah, Priya Tech-Halsey, Domestic Abuse Commissioner at Warwickshire County Council.
Brilliant. And she's used to my jokes as well, so right, Priya. Right, thank you very much. Who wants to kick off? Writing them down, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here to provide an update on the safe accommodation. Warwickshire County Council is dedicated to ensure that there is a safe accommodation provision available to victim survivors in Warwickshire. We have a traditional refuge provision available as well as self-contained properties of 2 to 3 bedrooms. Properties also available to women, men, LBGT+, those with pets and those with larger families, including sons over the age of 14. Dedicated tailored support is also provided whilst in safe accommodation. Victim survivors receive tailored support included designated key workers, practical and emotional support, an individual support plan, a tailored support for children, support with registering with GP, schools, support to find employment or access to benefits, support with individuals, independent living skills and money management. Those in safe accommodation also have the option to attend specialist domestic abuse therapy. The therapy helps heal and recover from the effect of domestic abuse. I'll take any questions. Thank you.
What do you say?
What?
Speak into the microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Brilliant. Thank you. Priya, do you want to come in, or are you supporting any?
I'm just supporting for any questions that Dale might get later on.
Brilliant. Thank you. Councillor Wally Hoggins, please. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Wally Hoggins. It was nearly, I nearly called you Councillor Orcock. That could have been just as bad as well, couldn't it?
Right. Some time ago, I was involved in some victims of domestic abuse, and the accommodation that they received was a considerable distance away from Stratford-upon-Avon. Upon arrival at their premises, there was very little provision for them. It was a mother with 2 children, and one of them being a teenage child in the midst of GCSEs. One of the facilities that was not provided within this accommodation was access to broadband within that. So is that now classified as a utility? And also, what provisions do we have nearer to Stratford? They were moved, I think, out to Southam Rugby Way, and of course that had a massive impact on the schooling of the children, because not only had they been torn out of their homes for terrible, terrible circumstances, but they were then subjected to the horrors of, not being able to attend the local schools. It was not good enough. I don't think it was your finest hour, if I'm honest.
Thank you. Can I ask if it was like dispersed properties, like individual houses, or was it kind of the traditional refuge property?
It was a dispersed property.
Right, okay. I mean, we have availability across the county for dispersed, but it is open to kind of everyone in the UK. There is kind of a system where people will check where the available properties are. A lot of times people do need to leave the county or their area for kind of safety reasons. So there is kind of that rule that there is kind of a system, a live system where you will see all the properties that are available. So unfortunately, that's probably why she was not housed in Stratford, because there probably wasn't availability there. But Wi-Fi should be standard across all the properties. It might just take time to get that set up before they move in, because we do try and move people in quite quickly when another person's moved out. So, and then I think there could be a bit of time lag, but there should be Wi-Fi in all the properties.
Can you explain that to me? Because for schooling purposes and for continuity of care, what do you mean there might be a delay if somebody moves out? Is it not just a continual service and access within that property?
It is a continual service, and unfortunately, if there was no properties available in Stratford, she would have been offered accommodation other places, but Wi-Fi should be included. But I can definitely check on that. But I have been assured that Wi-Fi is definitely included in all the dispersed properties before people move in. It could be that it was a new property, because it is a pilot project and we are getting new properties on board all the time for dispersed. So that could have been the reason if it was new. I'm not sure if she made you aware of that.
So I'm seeking assurances then that moving forward, that families don't have to suffer with that. All right. Thank you very much indeed.
Yep, that's fine. Councillor Wally Hoggins, apologies for the names mistaken. Right, who's next to ask some questions? Questions? Councillor Johnston, you want to come in, please?
I was just going to ask how we're going to deal with the written questions. Did that come before or after?
Well, I thought the bids, me and you had taken the opportunity to provide questions in advance. I thought, well, it's probably right that the people who hadn't asked any question, given them the opportunity, and then if we hadn't got those, we would then come back to them. Because obviously I've done 5, you've done a couple, and then we've got Councillor Gist who's hopefully added some as well. Councillor Little, do you want to come back in, and then I'll bring Councillor Wally Hoggins back in.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I was listening to your speech at the beginning, and I caught a reference to accommodation for families, including children children over the age of 14. Now, this is my ignorance. Can you explain the reference to the age of 14 and what that really means within the rules and regulations, etc.?
So previously, a few years ago, we just had traditional refuge provision, which was kind of multi-occupancy or self-contained properties where there was shared communal areas. In there, it was only for women and kind of smaller children due to the size. So the past 3 years, we now have got a number of dispersed properties available, which are 2 and 3 bedroom houses. So that's why it opens up access to a lot more people, including women that have children or men that have children over the age of 14, because they would have not been able to reside in the traditional refuge provision, as it was a women's only kind of provision before.
Okay, so in that case, I'm making a sort of a logical jump. What happens when the child becomes an adult at the age of 18? Because I would have thought you were trying to preserve the nuclear family, even though it has been shattered somewhat by circumstances, whatever they are. And then I suspect what you're going to tell me is that there won't be accommodation for an 18-year-old within a family unit, and that's shattering even further. Or am I incorrect with that assumption?
No, definitely the dispersed properties, there can be children over 18 residing in there.
Councillor Hoggins, please.
Yes, thank you. What is your service doing to address the fact that in Stratford-on-Avon, in particular, our rates of domestic abuse and violent sexual crimes is very high indeed? What action plans are you writing, and how are you supporting our residents in order to address this issue?
So every quarter we do look at the rates of domestic abuse in our domestic abuse steering group. The rates fluctuate every quarter, so we are working with Sam Clemensik in the community safety team. He's been putting together task and finish groups to address domestic abuse in Stratford, and there's a number of kind of funding provisions that they've put in place, a number of projects that they've put in place specifically for Stratford. I'm not sure if Sam's going to be, or he has given any sort of update on that, but the community safety team are working really hard just to deliver specialist provision in Stratford with the additional funding from Stratford. But obviously we commission Refuge, which is a county-wide service, which support all residents in Warwickshire.
So are you concerned about the rates? Because they don't fluctuate that much in Stratford, they just seem to go up.
I mean, with domestic abuse, it's really difficult to understand if rates are going up, if that's a negative or a positive, because we know that it's an underreported crime. We know that there are a lot of people that will never report or access support. So I always see rates going up as confidence in reporting to the police and confidence in accessing supporting agencies to get support. So it's always that kind of discrepancy of, are we worried about it going up, or is it that people have more confidence? We're doing a lot of comms messaging all the time about accessing services, about reporting to the police. And we know it's an underreported crime anyway. So with the reports going up, we're looking at the type of reports there are. Are they high risk? Are we having a jump of high risk cases? So we're worried that medium risk are not getting reported, and then only when there's a big issue, there's high risk. But we are doing lots of work with different agencies, the police, the health, all the charity and voluntary sector that work with supporting victims of domestic abuse to help them understand what support services are out there for people to access support. And we're doing a lot of work with trying to encourage perpetrators to kind of change their behaviour as well. So that's one of the questions that came up about perpetrator management. But we're trying all different angles to try and help reduce domestic abuse. There's a lot of work going on in schools for about healthy relationships, to help people understand from an early age about healthy relationships and what constitutes a healthy relationship. So we kind of feel that going straight back to younger people is kind of helping with the kind of prevention, because a lot of time people have grown up in this situation, they normalise a lot of these things. So we are trying to work at what we can do for more preventative measures.
And I think that's a good question as well. If you can keep that in mind for next, I think it's 26th of November, we've got the Community Safety Partnership and Serious Violence update. from Councillor Giss and Sam Semensek. So I think we could add that on to as well as part of the questioning to see what they're doing. So I think that was a really good question. So you get the benefit of being able to ask it at consecutive meetings as well and getting 2 different answers. So you may, Councillor Wally-Huggins.
Finally, can you tell me, please, what does your service need to be better? Or to continue to improve, perhaps you would prefer that phrasing.
Well, obviously, funding is always an issue, really, with services. We would like to do a lot more kind of engagement work, a lot more prevention work, but the service specification that we have at the moment doesn't have anything specific in there for prevention. So when the service is up for recommissioning in a couple of years, we're definitely going to be looking at different models to include more kind of prevention work going forward.
So straight back to you then, Councillor. What are you going to do then? Because 2 years is a long way away, and we've got for this to be to kick that ball down the line for 2 years. I don't think is satisfactory. So what are you going to do then, as a councillor, cabinet member, to ensure that we actually visit this very quickly and don't wait for the 2 years for the contract to be up, please?
Thank you for the question. I think that what she was saying before is prevention, is getting more people to come forward, and the more people that come forward, the more funding we can put towards it, and the more we can basically stomp domestic abuse out. I think that's...
Regret you've misunderstood my question. Your officer said that we were going to, that more work needed to be done on prevention, but that the contract didn't include the current, is it contract? It doesn't include prevention as part of it, and we've got to wait for 2 years. I think all of us here would agree that prevention is better than cure, or the suffering of it. So my question to you, Councillor, is what are you going to do in order to ensure that we don't have to wait for 2 years for the cabinet for the funding to come through and for that to go back out to tender? One moment, please.
Yeah, I think we should take another look at it before the 2 years is up and put it in, because prevention is better than the cure.
So I'm sure you're grateful for the question that I've asked today, because that means that you can take that back to the hierarchy at the council. Did you want to come back in, please?
Yes, I just wanted to say that we can vary contracts throughout the time period. There is a lot of prevention work going on at the moment, but it's not just with this one contract. We've got community safety, we've got serious violence. Everybody's doing kind of as much as they can for prevention work, but anything that we would like to change, we can do so as we go along, but kind of big changes we can do in 28. But we are constantly working to ensure that the service is delivering. We have regular contract review meetings every quarter. I meet my providers every 2 weeks to ensure that we're addressing kind of the figures and the numbers and the data. So I just want to assure you that we are continuously looking at improving the service throughout the lifespan of the contract. And we have made numerous changes throughout the contract time period when we feel that they are required.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Off. Councillor Wally-Huggins. I don't know why today, it's on a bad day today, so I do apologise. Councillor Wally-Huggins, I will buy you a coffee after the meeting, so I do apologise, and a bar of chocolate as well. Next time, if I do it, throw it at me. So I do apologise. So I owe you a coffee and a piece of cake. Good stuff. So, Councillor Hawcock, hopefully I won't owe you a coffee and a piece of cake, because I have got your name right.
You wouldn't dare get my name wrong, and you'd only ever do it once. I don't know what's happening with the numbers on reports, etc., because the last report I'd had, it had actually dropped ever so slight, only not enough as it should do, but only slightly, but it had dropped down, especially between families and single incidences, etc. So I'm just wondering, could we get the exact numbers of reporting that has come in, that people who have been actioned and helped, I think the majority have actually gone into social housing. From the figures that came up. But before we have the discussion in November about this, I think we need the exact figures for both singles and for families, and also how many of them moved on into social housing, whether in the district or had to be moved out of the district because of it. Is that something that you'd be able to provide for us, please?
Yeah, we can. And just to say about the numbers, they fluctuate every single quarter. There is no kind of, in each area, it kind of fluctuates. So you would like the figures of the people leaving safe accommodation and where are they going into after, because that was one of the questions.
Yeah, I think it is important to emphasise reporting, both in terms of reporting the incidents, but also reporting back to members to see what is happening. And like I say, as Priya said, the trends do fluctuate. And I think but we can't make decisions or can't ask questions if we haven't got information. So I think it's a chicken egg situation. And you'll be pleased to know, Councillor Wiley-Hoggins, I get called a different name, so I've been called Councillor Trump a few times, and when I'm particularly prickly, Councillor Grump. So with a moment, so I've been called worse. But I'm not used to it now, so again, once again, apologies. Any questions? Councillor Keithy, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation. Interesting to listen to the start of the questions, because it's not really a service that I'm very familiar with, but I do act as a parish champion for the parish councils. And one of the things that I don't know if other people are the same, don't really understand what the pathway is for people suffering domestic abuse to find these services and how that is promoted. You mentioned communication is a huge thing, and in fact the more people know about how to get help, the easier it is for them to get that help, and it might bring more people forward, so you've got an increasing workload. But I'm just wondering whether or not you've got something that illustrates that pathway to help, and whether or not you could share with us, as well as the data on the statistical data, whether or not you could share some of the communication materials that maybe we could push out through to the local parish councils, town councils, so that they can understand what you're doing. It's probably passed me by. I'm not saying you haven't done anything. I just haven't been made aware of it myself. So if I could be more aware of it, I could certainly assist you with that.
Yeah, definitely. We can definitely send through kind of the pathway. With our domestic abuse service, we have a single point of contact helpline number. So it's for professionals or victim survivors to just call this one number to be able to access support. And we have a lot of posters with the tear-off slips with the number on the bottom that we've been asking hospitals and places and community centres to put in the back of like toilet doors and things. We're just getting a new flyer done for sexual assault and domestic abuse all in one. So we are constantly putting resources together and distributing that as far and wide as we can. But we can definitely get some of that literature out.
Would we have that literature around in, for example, the council offices, so people would know that exists here already, does it?
Yes, we should have it available in our reception.
Good, I'll look for that. Thanks very much.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Any other questions before we move on to the written ones? You sneaked in again, Councillor Orcott.
Just the one, if that's all right, Chair. I know that through work I've done myself, especially working with residents, not in my ward but with others, one of the biggest reason that a person may return to the home of domestic violence is actually down to financial need. I understand there's organisations there to help, but when you suddenly go from living in a large 4-bedroom house with joint incomes, etc., to living in a 2-bedroom flat, women especially can be penalised because they've fled the domestic violence situation, but they're still having bills, etc., that are coming to them, which can ultimately end up that a woman goes back to the abuser because of financial reasons, which quite frankly is terrifying to think that that happened and is still happening today. What route do you have to help support women, not just with their big move, but also financially, just to ensure that at no point does a woman who's fled domestic violence with children feels that their only option to continue to survive is to return back to the abuse home?
So our Commission Domestic Abuse Service provided by Warwickshire do a lot of advocacy work. They help with a lot of kind of access to benefits or help access to finding employment, but also money management, and also getting organisations in to the safe accommodation to help with financial issues like that. Some of the women will have debt because maybe the perpetrator might have taken out loans in their names. So they do work with trying to clear that debt while working with the organisation of why the woman is in this position in the first place. So they do work a lot on trying to alleviate some of those loans and things, and they do work with the loan companies quite a lot about domestic abuse. So yeah, there is lots of advocacy and lots of like holistic support with all the different aspects that they might be facing.
Brilliant. And again, I think just add on to Councillor Alcott's question, is that you provide support across a range of all diverse communities, not one particular part of the community, or diverse. And your accommodation under this new safe accommodation is being designed to ensure that is fit for purpose and meets all needs. So I think we've got to emphasise that this, I'll fully endorse what you're saying, Councillor Alcott, but it's to just to expand it, just to say that it is all parts of the community are affected by this horrible crime. So sorry, but I was trying to be, I can be serious at times, and I think that was just a serious point that we need to get through. If that's okay, we'll just go through some of the written questions that I and Councillor Johnston and Councillor Gist have put through. So what I'll do, I'll go through my questions because they were on the top of the list, and why not? Then bring Councillor Johnston in, then I'll bring Councillor Gist in, and if Councillor Carls, I believe she indicated she wanted to come up, she wanted to come up at the same time, I'll bring them up at the same time. Yeah, I think the first question was how much is the county and the government investing in safe accommodation throughout all parts of the county? So that was the one. Question 2 and 3 build on to Councillor Keith's questions about accessible services. How do you ensure that both victims, survivors and professionals are aware of the services available to them and how to access them? And obviously this applies locally and nationally, and we've already spoken about nationally as well. And what accommodation options and appropriate support are in place for all victim survivors? So it's like three of my 6 questions there. Hopefully they're all interlinked. So if you could come back on those, that would be great. Thank you.
So we'll start from the top then. So the Warwickshire County Council has a new duty under Section 4 of the Domestic Abuse Act to provide support with those who live within the relevant areas with safe accommodation. The domestic abuse grant is provided to local authorities. Warwickshire received 1.3 million, just over 1.3 million for 2025 to 2026. All supports provided to those within safe accommodation and throughout the grant. Does that answer your first question, Councillor Crump?
Councillor 2 and Councillor 2. Question 2 and question 3. It's all about making people aware, which is following on from Councillor Keith's ones. Yeah. So again, making sure victims and professionals are aware of the services and how to access them and what accommodations.
So early intervention, that's done by our partners, mainly the police. They provide a RUS bus, different situations where they can early detect abuse at homes if they're ever called out and stuff like that. They're also increasing their issuing of stalker prevention orders as well. We also have a multi-agency risk assessment, which I was informed that they do that literally every 2 weeks as well. When it comes to prevention, I'm going to pass you to my officer, who can tell you more about the prevention.
Yep, so this is just question 1 where you've put, as part of prevention, how will perpetrators continue to be held accountable for their behaviour? So as Councillor Bridgewater alluded to, it's more kind of the police and probation that would kind of, hold perpetrators to account, and as part of their bail conditions and things. They are doing more on stalking protection orders. There's a big push on kind of issuing stalking protection orders, more awareness raising on stalking protection orders. There is kind of the MARAC, which is a multi-agency risk assessment conference. So if somebody has scored quite high on a risk assessment form, they would automatically be referred to a MARAC, which is a multi-agency meeting. It's 2 days a week, every single week, where we will cover all the high-risk victims, and a number of agencies will be there to talk about how to support that victim survivor, and also interventions for the perpetrator in that meeting. The Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner commission a domestic abuse perpetrator programme, which is kind of a voluntary perpetrator programme to help change behaviour. We offer a lot, in Warwickshire County Council, we offer a lot of training free to all professionals on domestic abuse and sexual assault. One of the new training courses we've brought in is about working with perpetrators and referring them to the perpetrator programme, to ensure that everybody who's working with perpetrators or might be supporting perpetrators, of how they can speak to them about changing their behaviour and referring them on. Because if we're going to start talking about prevention, we really need to start thinking more about changing perpetrators' behaviour, because the onus is always on the victim to keep themselves safe, to keep their children safe. But actually, we really need to address the issue of perpetrators' behaviour. We have got a partnership website which is called Talk to Someone, talktosomeone.org.uk, and we've recently put a new section on called Am I Causing Harm, to encourage perpetrators to look at their behaviour. A lot of people do not want to think of themselves as perpetrators, especially if they haven't gone through the criminal justice system. We want them to kind of look at different types of behaviours that they might be expressing, and what that could cause for especially children in the household. And there's also information on there about how to refer to the Domestic Abuse Perpetrator Programme. So they're all the stuff that Warwickshire County Council are doing to kind of help, maybe not keep perpetrators to account, but more highlight what can be done with perpetrators. Did you want to go on for accessible services?
Yep, and to lead on to question 2, which is just more of the same, is getting the message out there. We have regular communications on social media with our partners as well. We also have events that we go to that just highlight and give people information to get out there for whatever partners we use out there. We also have the website, Talk to Somebody, and a single number that everybody can contact and get the help that they need.
Brilliant. Do you want to... Councillor Keithley, you can come in, because I've obviously going through one, so we'll have a break from my questions. Okay. Do you want to come in then, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. You used a very catchy acronym, MARAC, for the regular bi-weekly 2-day meetings. I just wondered whether or not the process that you're using is sort of set out nationally. So all local authorities do the same. So that's quite important to understand what the legislative framework is that actually provides the governance of how you're operating and what you're doing. Can you just help us understand that fits somewhere, and it's just not Warwickshire County Council having come up with the catchy acronym?
No, MARACs are across the board. Every local authority, every police force will have a MARAC. So we have, it depends on how busy the area is. Some areas have them every single day, and they just look at high-risk victims. We have them 2 days every single week. to deal with high-risk victims or to address high-risk victims, and they happen kind of the same, like a week after that they've come through on the dash risk assessment and they've come through the system. So it's really quick. We'll get all partners around the table to discuss high-risk victims.
And the legislative framework that sits above all this, what exactly is that?
Well, MARAC feeds into a domestic abuse and sexual assault partnership board, which acts as our local domestic abuse partnership board that is mandatory for every local authority to have a domestic abuse local partnership board. And that's how MARAC feeds in. We have a steering group and to discuss all the cases, and then that feeds into the...
This sits under one of the ministers, presumably?
Yeah, Jess Phillips is the kind of...
Is it Jess Phillips? Okay, thanks.
Brilliant, thank you for that. I think some of the questions, questions 2, question 3, we've spoken about, or you've done in a presentation. And I think my question 4 and Councillor Johnson's question 1, sort of like linking together, how do you want to do, rather than listen to me...
I agree with you, Chair, they are the same question.
Do you want to ask your one?
I think you've partly answered it, I think, in terms of the MARAC operation. I'm just wondering, is there any kind of key worker who is responsible for taking forward a plan of work with a particular service user?
With MARACs, they don't have to consent to be heard at MARAC, the victim survivor, so anybody that people are worried about will go to a MARAC. And then if they're being supported by the Domestic Abuse Commission Service, they will have a dedicated IDVA, an independent domestic violence advocate. And if they are not being supported by an IDVA, all cases that come to MARAC will be contacted by our commission services to offer the services of an IDVA, which they will then hold as a caseload of all these clients that they're working with. So they will have a designated key worker.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Yeah, I've got a couple want to last together, and then we'll move on then to Councillor Johnson's second questions and bring up the portfolio holders to come and ask their questions as well. Number 5 is quite an important one, the support to return home or move on. And again, how do you ensure victim survivors are supported to return home safely, or should they choose to move into an alternative permanent accommodation? And adding on to that, working with Refuge, how do you monitor improvements to the offer for victim survivors? Thank you.
It's a very short question, but a long answer, I would say. There's quite a lot they do. Refuge provides a safe accommodation outreach workers who can relocate or help them back into the housing. They've got a housing team as well. In the districts and boroughs, they work with housing to support victims, survivors who primarily need a housing support, a whole housing support team as well. Refuge provides sanctuary schemes, help with extra safety measures for those who wish to stay in their own properties, like ring doorbells, CCTV, letterbox covers, etc. Support with additional needs as well. So there's a lot going on with the aftercare, I should say, of there.
I was just going to say that we have dedicated domestic abuse workers in the housing teams in each district and borough. The Refuge's Safe Accommodation Outreach workers, they co-locate within the housing teams of the district and borough. So as soon as somebody comes and mentions that they're a victim of domestic abuse, these Safe Accommodation Outreach workers and the domestic abuse specialists in the housing teams can quickly work, and they have that extra specialist knowledge of domestic abuse.
But I think that's really good, that's really important. I think my other point on that was just measuring the outcomes, how you performed, how the victim feels, how they're progressing, how they're moving on, how they're being helped to move on. And obviously what things you've learnt from that victim that you can use in other areas to make the journey for the other victims much easier and less troublesome. So I think that's the other thing I'd like to see, some review of what's happened, and potentially those reviews bring improvements to the offer. So I think that, I'm sure you're probably you're doing that anyway. It's just confirmation. Johnston, do you want to do your second question? And at the same time, because again it's quite similar to the ones that Councillor Gist is asking. So if you want to do your question, and if Councillor Gist and Councillor Coles want to come up as well, that would be good. If they want to, they don't have to, but thank you. Councillor Johnson, do you want to do
I
your
think
question?
my question's fairly straightforward. I just wanted some idea of the volume of work and the numbers involved.
The question was, just so we know, is...
Yeah, can we be given some idea of the numbers of victim survivors engaged in Stratford-on-Avon?
Excellent. So in 2024 to 2025, the Warwickshire District Council Abuse Support and Accommodation Service provided by Refuge support 344 adults from Stratford-upon-Avon district. This includes community support and accommodation.
Do you want to follow up on that?
It's rather more than I was expecting, fairly considerably more, to be honest. And again, the question follow-up, I guess, is around prevention, but I think that'll come up later.
Again, I would probably assume that they would range, this support and inquiries would range at different levels. I'm trying to put this delicately as possible, whether general inquiries from members of the public regarding domestic abuse to the more extreme. So, and by getting in early and providing help and advice at a level that's not so serious, I'm trying to be delicate as possible on this, so apologies if I'm coming across a bit clumsy. It then stops the process getting worse. So I think that's probably why some of the numbers are high, but from my experience in the past. But I think that's a good question, and so whether you've got anything to add on to that, that would be helpful.
That number includes kind of short-term support, long-term support, and those accessing safe accommodation. So it could be short-term support, could be calls to the helpline, you know, asking questions about, am I experiencing domestic abuse? What kind of things can I put in place now to support myself, through to longer-term support. We haven't broken that figure down in short-term support and long-term support, but it is a variety of support that they have offered to victim survivors in Stratford.
I guess it's Councillor Gist's question 1 as well, which might give some focus on the kind of interventions being provided.
Yeah, I think that's why we're linked to. I'll bring you in again shortly, Stuart, but I'll let Councillor Gist do her questions. Oh, go on then. Come on in then, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Early intervention, I think, was what you were suggesting, was important, but context is important as well. So 344 or whatever sounds a lot, but how does that compare sort of nationally as a percentage of the head of population? Because, I mean, 344 sounds a lot, but in context of, you know, if it was London, you'd say that's not very many, but if it was a small town, you'd say that was a lot. So can you give us a feeling for that context? Because on its own, that number doesn't help us very much.
I'd have to get back to you of kind of population size and a comparison, if that's really what you're after. We just kind of look at Warwickshire County Council numbers usually, and Warwickshire County Council district and boroughs, so we would compare it to kind of the other district and boroughs that we have. And over time, kind of that changes anyway, but if you wanted me to look at kind of how that compares to other
It's just helpful because you heard Councillor Johnson say was a bit surprised. It was a bigger number than he was expecting, probably expecting, 50 or something, and it was a lot bigger. But without the context of that number, it doesn't help us.
Yeah.
But I think someone might have some context.
Can I just add to that? I'd just like to point out it's 344 people who had the courage to come forward and ask for help. So that's, if the number can go up, that's even better for us, to help all these people.
Councillor Guest, you
I'm
indicated?
just having a conflab with Councillor Coles. I believe, and I'll be corrected, but I think it's nearly one woman a week is murdered by their partner in England and Wales. I beg your pardon. It's one every day of the year. Almost every day of the year, a woman is murdered by her partner in England and Wales, to give you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, that's interesting, but it doesn't really help us understand the context of 344 people helped in this district regarding, the other districts around the country. That's a separate sort of number.
Yeah, but it tells you what the top of the pyramid is, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not good, is it?
Before we go on, the monitoring officer would like to come in, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify that this debate, which is very serious around domestic abuse and violence, obviously cuts across the community and is not only women. So the Chair wanted me just to stress that point. But the second point on clarity, which the Chair wanted me to bring out, is of the figures that you've just referenced, are there repeat victims who've come back of that 344?
There will be, yes.
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. I think. Go on, Councillor Keith. I can see you.
Well, only that
you're on the same line as me on this.
Statistics, damn statistics, and all that nonsense. It just helps to have some context. Compare apples with apples, and allow us to see, what the situation is in this district more clearly. That would be helpful. Thanks.
Councillor Littlewood, and then I'll bring Councillor Gist back in. Please.
Thank you. I'm following on from what's been said before. You mentioned that the 344 could, or it does include repeat. Victims. Thank you. That was the word. What proportion, because that makes a significant difference to the actual recognition of what the number really means. It also indicates that possibly there's a failing in the system, that not protecting either the men or the women or these families. Could you give more information on that, please?
I'd have to get a breakdown for you and get back to you if that's all right with the proportion of repeat victims. But we are doing a lot of work with the police on identifying repeat victims and the measures that have been put in place and how successful they have been. So that is kind of a deep dive that we are doing in our domestic abuse steering group at the moment, but I can definitely get the proportion of that to you if you'd like.
That would be very useful, but have you got a number on the top of your head, which I'm not going to hold you to, but as an idea of third, 2/3, 1/3?
I wouldn't be able to get that, sorry.
And that's why it's best to, rather than guess or have an educated guess, rather than come back. I think you take the right decision there. Councillor Rice, please.
At the risk of being a bit of a dog with a bone, perhaps you could compare 344 with Warwick district, maybe Nuneaton and Bedworth borough, and other areas of Warwickshire, please.
We will definitely be able to provide that data with the differences in district and boroughs. I was just looking at it recently, but unfortunately there are quite a few where it's kind of people haven't given their exact address or it's unknown, so there is still a bit of an unknown figure in there which kind of can skew the figures a little bit, but that's definitely a breakdown that I can send across, comparing it to other district and boroughs, definitely.
We'll bring Councillor Gist in there. I think some of these questions have been sort of like touched on, so if you can bring them into a couple of questions rather than asking 8. I particularly like your question regarding the safe accommodation regarding the Gypsy and Traveller community, I think that is really pertinent. So if you want to bring on that one first and then combine some of the others, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My question is number 8 about Gypsy and Travellers. I was talking to the Community Safety Officer, and when we were talking about things being suitable for, you know, everyone in the community, has explained to me that it's not always women, but on this occasion, women from Gypsy and Traveller communities, when they want to or are able to get out of a situation from domestic abuse, they want to go to a community they know, which would be their own community, which would be another Gypsy and Traveller community. So my question really is what we do to support those residents, because they are our residents, and I understand the way Gypsy and Traveller communities work is that other women put themselves at risk to gather money together to be able to give the victims money to flee. So it's very, you know, it's other women are then putting themselves at risk. So I was very interested to know what we do for that community in particular.
Thank you for the question. Safe accommodation is accessible to all communities. We are aware this community faces additional barriers. The Warwickshire County Council attend a dedicated meeting on domestic abuse in the GRT community. So yeah, we're doing all we can for them and more.
But is there any, this might be one for Priya, particular safe accommodation, you know, for Gypsy and Traveller ladies, because they wouldn't necessarily want to go into safe accommodation that, say, I would. I don't know if there's...
Yeah, we have, you know, our safe accommodation is accessible to all. We don't have any specific safe accommodation that is just for that one community, but we do, you know, we would encourage anybody from that community to access the different types of safe accommodation provisions that we have available. And as Councillor Bridgewater mentioned, recently there has been a quarterly meeting set up that just focuses on domestic abuse in the GRT community, all the engagement work that's going on. So it's just highlighting that we are aware that it is really prevalent in that community. I know that Stratford are doing some prevention work as well with schools in that community, which is great. And we've also, as I mentioned before about our training courses, we actually have got a training course on supporting people from that community in relation to domestic abuse. So we're doing as much as we can for that particular community, but we don't have any safe accommodation provisions that's solely for them.
Thank you. My other questions are really around the numbers that we have in Stratford District and within the county, because to get a better understanding of what we have in Stratford District and therefore how we can work together to obviously improve that. And so that was sort of a larger number of my questions. And then I think I was thinking about how obviously when someone flees and they go into safe accommodation, at some point they want to get on with their life. And so do they then move on, presumably? And also, it's about need and demand, isn't it? We have, presumably, we could have as much demand as, you know, all safe accommodation will be filled, whatever we provide, sadly. So I think that was, my other question was around that, really.
So, when it comes to numbers, we are unable to disclose locations. I don't even know myself what the locations are or where they are in the districts or counties. I think it should stay that way. You know, the safe places for these people.
Yeah, I think if you can provide numbers in terms of general numbers, in terms of Stratford District and comparatives for different parts of district and the districts and boroughs in the county, and some comparison. And obviously, we are mindful of the sensitivities, etc. So if you could provide as much information as back to Councillor Gift's questions, and then we will put them back as an addendum to the minutes, if that's okay. So we've got the details. So I think lots of those questions are relevant and pertinent. I don't think it's fair for you to be able to have all the detail available because we only gave the questions on Monday, wasn't it, Howard? Or yeah.
It's not been a long
time. So I think I don't think it's right for you to have the numbers at your fingertips, even though I'm a number geek. So I think if we could have those in as much detail as possible without breaching any confidentialities, etc. That would be helpful. So I think those would be quite good. So what I'll do, we're mindful we're nearly an hour on this now, and this is a very important subject, and I think we could have the whole meeting. Councillor Coles, I did bring you up, so I'll bring you in, then Councillor Wally Hoggins, and then I will sum up and we'll bring it to an end, if that's okay.
Thank you, Councillor. I mean, I think a lot of the work that we do on this needs to be driven by actual data and knowledge of the situation rather than sort of reported or belief of what is going on. And I know certainly that, you know, we will be working, and I'd be very interested to see your data when it comes. It certainly is driving what we're thinking of doing in relation to our duties towards it. And obviously I come from the housing side, and you know, the questions we've had, you know, if you are fleeing in danger of your life, that is the primary consideration when you are looking at alternative accommodation. And so I believe there is a balance to be struck between fearing for your life and fearing to keep your everyday life, and that balance has to be worked on. And so you treat the priority, and then you have to pick up the pieces later on. Very sadly, it's very unfortunate. But I think in order to stop me boring the entire committee on this for the rest of today, and you do have other items on your agenda, it would be very interesting to get the data and consider, you know, we will continue to work towards our aims of prevention and also dealing with these situations when they arise. So I'm looking forward to receiving that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Councillor Wally-Hoggins, please.
Yeah, I'm just seeking some clarity. Who is the portfolio holder with responsibility for community safety, please? Yes. So in that case then, I'm therefore a little bit shocked and surprised that you're using this OSC meeting to ask, seeking answers to questions that you really should already know the answers to. Some of these are pretty basic questions that you should already be on top of as the portfolio holder for the Cabinet. Thank you.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Guest, please?
I don't think it's our duty to have all of the safe accommodation in the county.
No, I think what Councillor Wally-Hoggins was particularly concerned about, I think your question too.
I don't have access to these
okay.
figures.
No, it's
I'm not told. I get crime figures.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
No, my point that I'm making is that you are entitled to ask these questions, not within an overview and scrutiny committee meeting, and possibly should have done so as a portfolio holder before coming to this meeting. Thank you.
I'll bring the monitoring officer in, please.
Thank you, Chair. I believe the questions today were meant to be directed to the portfolio holder for Warwickshire County Council and the officer who's with him. And on behalf of the Chair, I'm being asked that perhaps that question can be followed up outside of the meeting, because the questions today were meant to be direct to those who are visiting us today.
I think it's probably good that we have communication, and if we can get as much communication between all partners, so everybody's, we can, like I say, we've spoken about numbers, etc., and data, and comparisons and benchmarking and things like that. So it is important that all partners have got the information as much as possible, so therefore the partners can then potentially do work in their own areas to support you as well. So I think that's fair. I've got a couple of things I'd just like to end on. One, I think we do need to make it as easy as possible for not only victims of this crime to be able to report this, but also friends, relatives, colleagues to be able to report their concerns, because they might be aware, they might be able to see some potentially controlling behaviour that the victim doesn't recognise. Sometimes people are being isolated from family and friends in a subtle and, I was going to say cunning, but I'm not sure that's the right word, but I think a devious or way of the victim doesn't understand. So whether we can encourage friends, colleagues, relatives to report or share their concerns or ask for advice, I think that is quite pertinent. Because in my previous role, I know it's a different name, but they were called domestic homicide reviews. And when I've attended one, when I knew the victim and the perpetrator, because I used to take their dog a walk, it just brings it home. And there are potentially so many opportunities that could have been taken to prevent this happening. So, yeah, I totally understand, and this is this is really close to my heart on this one. And Councillor Orcock is surprised how serious I'm being on this one, but this is how much I really value the work that's been done on this. So, if we can get as much information out, if we can work together, make the offer available as easy as possible for the victim or survivor of such abuse, that would be great. And again, if we can get I know that many supermarkets now put the National Domestic Abuse Hotline on the bottom of their receipts, 0800 2000 24/7, number geek here, or I know the county one was 0800 408 1552. So if you can get that message out, and hopefully we'll put it in the minutes as well, so if anybody reads those minutes. I think that the bit about the Talk to Someone website, if we get that, again, if we have the details, we can perhaps put it in the minutes and get that out as well, because we've got to get people to talk about this. So, actually being relatively seriously, because I do take this and I do value. So thank Councillor Keith, go on, have the final word, please.
Well, it's just a final question, if that's okay. Is there time for one?
Yeah, time for one.
Okay. It's just in respect to a question asked a minute ago. I just wanted to clarify accountabilities, responsibilities for this particular service of safe accommodation and refuge. Can you just confirm to me that it is the county council that is accountable and responsible for providing this service? Can you also confirm to me who you consult with? So in other words, who's on the MARAC, and whether or not, in fact, the district council is a consultee in the process, or whether or not the district council is just informed of what you do?
Warwickshire County Council commission domestic abuse, the refuge provision. So we would hold that service to account. With MARAC, the police chair MARAC and the police are the main referrers into MARAC, but we commission the coordination of MARAC through Refuge. So Refuge coordinate all of the, kind of do all the admin for MARAC, really. And we would, and us with the police would hold them to account for all the MARAC work that they do.
So in terms of information provision, because the district council isn't a consultee in the work that you do, is it? You're shaking your head, so it isn't. So are you obliged to provide information to the district council, and do you do so, and how do you do that?
So there is a number of meetings that take place, and all the district and boroughs attend those meetings. It's usually the Community Safety Partnership leads that attend all those meetings. They have access to all the data. The housing teams all attend MARAC as well. There's a MARAC operating protocol that lists all the agencies that are involved in MARAC and which agencies are allowed to receive which amount of data, because obviously we've got lots of data and data sharing agreements in place there.
Okay, thanks.
Brilliant. When you sneak that extra question in, it was a good question, Councillor Keith, so I will let you off on this occasion. You sneaked an extra question in, but it was well worth waiting for. But I think we need to draw this to a close now. We've had a real good delve into this. We've got a commitment for extra information, and we've also got details that we can put in the minutes, particularly of the National Domestic Abuse Helpline, the one that County offers, the Talk to on the website, and anything else that we can put into the minutes as well. That will be really helpful. So thank you for coming here today, talking about a particularly challenging subject, but it's even more challenging for the people who are suffering this abuse of all parts of our diverse community, as the monitoring officer correctly stated. So I think I'll let you go now. And bearing in mind, if we've been going for an hour, I'll propose a 5-minute recess, if members are happy with that. We'll settle for a good 5, but no longer than 10. So thank you for that. Right, welcome back. I did slightly overrun the 5 minutes due to pressure of other members of the committee who needed their drinks, etc. And I wasn't looking at anybody in particular on this occasion, Councillor Keithley. So we'll move on to item 6, which is the update on devolution and local government reorganisation. And Mr. Perks will be doing this for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Just a short update today, because it was largely procedural, because I think that's probably where we are in the process at the moment. We're reaching the point where we need to sign off our submission to government about our preferred option for local government reorganisation in England, and we're due to make our submission by the 28th of November. So I thought probably the most useful thing to do was to run through the timetable of events between now and then to make sure that you're all aware of the opportunities and sort of what's expected of you to sort of reach the decision. We've published the report yesterday with the sort of the cabinet report and the accompanying appendices. They should all, hopefully everybody's got a copy of that, because they should have been provided these white envelopes at the start of the meeting. Because it was important that you got this as early as you could, because we've got a scrutiny session prior to Cabinet and I wanted to have as much chance to sit as possible. We will deliver, anybody who's not here today, we've had a couple of apologies, haven't we? We will deliver those papers to them so as they've got, they'll get them before the weekend, so they've got a chance to sort of scrutinise those. So if anybody's here who hasn't got them, raise their hands or see me afterwards and I'll make sure you've got a set to go away with. So the report is published, it's in the public domain, so you feel free to discuss that sort of as you see fit. The next sort of things we're doing, on Monday and Tuesday next week, we're doing 2 briefing sessions for all councillors, which you're welcome to attend, where David Buckland will run through a series of slides explaining what's in the sort of the great volume of paper that you've been provided with, and sort of pointing out the arguments and how it's been structured and the evidence. And there'll be, we're really seeing those points, those meetings, not as an opportunity for debate, because that will come later, but for clarification to make sure all members fully understand the submission and sort of the evidence and what it said. So feel free to come along to either of those. Monday the 3rd, the session is here in the chamber at 6 p.m. and that's an in-person session. On Tuesday the 4th at 6 p.m. there is a Teams session which you sure all had an invite to. It will be the same event at both sessions, so you don't need to attend both. If you want to attend both and hear it twice, you're very welcome. But you won't hear anything on the second day that you haven't heard on the first, other than some of the questions might be different. So feel free to attend whichever of those you see fit, but I would encourage members to attend that to make sure you've got an informed position. We've then got a meeting, an extraordinary meeting of the Avon Scrutiny Committee on the Wednesday the 5th, which I believe, Howard, is that 10 o'clock? Sorry to put you on the spot, but Howard will... Yeah, 10 o'clock. So that will allow a debate on the papers. I'll talk to the chairman about how we want to do that, but that will give you a chance to sort of pull together your thoughts, and if you feel fit, you can sort of put a submission into Cabinet as a result of those discussions. There will be a parish forum on the 6th, which is a Teams event in the evening. You're invited to attend if you want to, but it's really a matter for briefing the parishes. It'll be largely the same format as we've done on a slightly shorter version than you'll get on the Monday and Tuesday, because we're also covering the 5-year housing land supply briefing in that session with the parish forum. But just so as you know, that's going on, and so as the parishes have been kept updated and we've been sort of transparent. There will then be a meeting of Cabinet on Monday the 10th of November at 10 o'clock, where the Cabinet will consider its position and make a recommendation to Council, where we'll all get together on the 17th with a view to sort of deciding what submission we would like to make to government. The principal decision is whether it's for a single unitary Warwickshire proposal or a south and north Warwickshire proposal, of the 2 options you'll see in the paper. So there'll be a chance for the full debate to be had on that. And we are, just the sort of final thing I wanted to sort of say on that is that we are one of 4 councils making considering a very similar report. So the last one of which sort of meets on the 24th, so I think David will be asking for some editorial rights to sort of edit it to make sure that we've got a decision that everybody's happy with if there are minor editorial tweaks. So that will come through. And then following the meeting on the 24th, we will make the submission to governments to say sort of 1 or 2, whichever the council prefer. The recommendation on the papers that you'll see is a recommendation of supporting a 2-unitary solution, but that's obviously at the gift of members to sort of come to your view following the process I've just described. The only other 2 things I was just going to update on in terms of LGR was, at the moment, you'll find in your pack a sort of fairly bland-looking Deloitte report, which is the business case that we will be submitting to government. Between now and the submission, we will get that desktop published, so it's in the same house style as the previous submission we made, so it's a bit more readable and a bit more presentable, but trying to get everything together. We haven't had the chance to do that before we had to publish the papers for Cabinet, so apologies, it's not the most pretty and interesting looking document, but the facts are all there, and those facts will be what's translated into something a little bit more presentable for government. And the only other final comment I was going to make was relating to anybody who might not have seen that the Surrey decision on local government, which is the first decision that's come out from central government, was issued earlier this week. There were options for 2 or 3 unitaries presented to government and they consulted on. They've decided on a 2-unitary solution for Surrey, but have been keen to point out that that doesn't set a precedent for other decisions, and that it was influenced in part by the level of financial turmoil in that part of the district and the need for large organisations to be able to sustain that. But both of those unitary authorities were well above the 500,000 benchmark that was initially set for this, so I was just feeding that back to the committee. Happy to take any questions, but that's hopefully a useful update for you.
Councillor Wally-Hoggins, please.
Yes, I found the Surrey result interesting. Can you compare then, if you're going to use that as an example, what are the figures for our north? Can you remind us what the figures are for the north option and the south option, please?
In very broad numbers, we're around 350,000 north and south, so we would be significantly smaller than either of the Surrey authorities that were pointed out.
I thought that was relevant. I think that councillors, particularly because we are being bombarded with this information at the moment, I think I would welcome yet another email outlining the dates, particularly with these meetings and the one open to parish councils, because we can advertise that as well. Is that all right? But yeah. Thank you.
If I give you some details, can you send that out? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we'll send that to all councillors. Yeah.
I'm glad to see it's the Deputy Chief Executive making a mess with his coffee rather than the chair of the meeting. So apologies if you're cutting something from me there, Mr. Perks, but it did make me smile, and I'm glad you're okay. Yeah, I think there's any other questions? I think the point about the timetable is pertinent, and I was going to say put it in the minutes, but it's probably it wouldn't be pertinent. Some of the things will be out of date by then, by the time the minutes are produced. But again, I think if we could mention that. So, Councillor Johnston, do you want to come in, please?
Does the document deal with the issue of the strategic authority?
To an extent, yes. At the moment, the strategic authority process is running separate to the local government reorganisation process, but there is an overlap that we need the local government reorganisation process to support potential devolution process of strategic authority process going forward. And we're asked in the brief to effectively, I'm paraphrasing slightly, to keep as many options open as possible. And the report speaks to that. One of the downsides of the single unitary authority would restrict some of the options for strategic authorities going forward, because it would effectively eliminate the strategic Warwickshire option, because you'd have to have at least 2 unitaries to serve it, so it takes that from the table. There is also some commentary that if you had a single unitary Warwickshire, it would rationally only go to one strategic authority, and it's difficult to see where that would logically fit. So one of the arguments that the report puts forward for the the two-unitary solution, it gives you more opportunity for a satisfactory strategic authority solution going forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's helpful. I take on Councillor Wally Huggins' point about the two unities for Surrey with the population being 500,000. 500,000. Talk about money. Typical accountant here. 500,000 plus, which could have been, potentially below if it had been three unities. Thank you for the report. I have picked it up briefly, and in the recess I was having a quick look, and it's good that we're going to have the desktop exercise sent to us. Whilst it's understandable with a lot of information, and I have been having eye tests and different things recently, some of the information might be quite challenging to read. So I just wondered whether anything could be done about that. I'll just page 243 came out over the main report came out. I think I might need a magnifying glass or two to read some. It's just some of the thoughts, comments, and whether we can help people with a visual impairment.
I think probably the most useful thing I can sort of say there is we have released the file digitally as well. It's all available sort of on our website. So if there's a particular table you wanted to look at, it would probably be best to sort of look at that on your PC and try and zoom it up a bit. If there's any, we haven't got a large print version of it at the moment, but if there's anything that anybody particularly needs to help them make the decision, feel free to get in touch, and I'll see what I can do to get it in a format that's usable for you or anybody who contacts you.
It wasn't a dig, because obviously you're producing something that size and relying on other partners' information as well. It can be challenging. I'm just pointing out really, it's particularly because I've been having some eye tests as well, and it was just come out as pertinent, and I thought, well, it can help. Did you indicate, Councillor Wally Huggins, you indicate again? Or, so come on in, Councillor Walker. Ask your question and tell me what you're trying to say as well, please.
I was just going to advise Chair to speak into the microphone because you weren't being picked up in a lot of what you said.
Yeah, apologies, because I was trying to look and, I was trying to multitask and fail, so thank you for that. I do apologise.
Yeah, that's all I really wanted to say. I do get what you just said about the size of the print. It is going to make it slightly difficult, but I suppose going between the hard copy and online, if I struggle, I'll give a shout about that, because it is difficult.
Yes, Mr. Perk.
It's not really my place to advise you how you go about your duties, but it might be useful to learn that the story is all set out within the covering report. So if you read the covering report, that gives you all the information and the arguments to make your decision. The smaller stuff at the back is the appendices that support that argument. So maybe if you started reading the report and there was something particularly that you perhaps took a different view on, you could refer to the appendices. But if you start at the report, which is in quite a large, easy readable font, then you might find that some of the bits are less confusing for you. But as I say, you do your job as you see fit.
That's the trouble of sitting next to a numbers geek, Mr. Perks. When you see numbers, the accountants will go to the numbers first and then look at the words to see if it'll meet in. Whereas I'm sure the monitoring officer would probably have a different view on that from her experiences using words. Is that right, Lassie? Thank you.
That would be right.
That was very helpful. Any other questions, or should we move on to item number 7, which is the update on task and finish groups? Councillor Johnston, do you want to come in with a brief update, please?
Thank you. I think we're making pretty good progress in the remit. We're still outstanding some pieces of information from particularly the County Council. We've had difficulty identifying the key person to ask. Unless we've had something in the last couple of days, Mr. Allison, we're still outstanding a response from the County Council, as I understand it. As I said last time, what we would like to do is a fairly significant survey of residents and of parish councils. And I'm would like us to recommend to Cabinet that we are given more time, we extend the time given to carry out the survey I've just mentioned, that we're ready to go with the letters. I think that will give us a really good evidence base, which we will be able to use in taking forward our own policies and procedures and in providing advice to our local MPs when the government finally does come forward with its consultation on the recommendations on management companies, which wants to standardise the sort of policies for public open space and make them mandatory. There is no regulation at the moment on private management companies. So I would wish to ask Cabinet to free us from completing our deadline on the whatever date Cabinet in December is, to enable us to carry out the survey which we are set up to go.
Well, I think we may have already overcome that because during my verbal update to Cabinet last time, as part of the Cabinet minutes, I think it's minute 260, I verbally requested we felt an extension be given to the interim report to allow members to fully conduct the research required to provide evidence to support the political debate on the issue. So there's nothing to indicate that they turned that request down. So I'm probably on dodgy legal grounds there, so I won't be looking at Marcia for a minute. I think we might have, by tacit, we've got tacit approval to do so, but I'm more than happy to be advised by the monitoring officer on this one.
Thank you, Chair. I was at Cabinet and that wasn't my understanding, with the greatest of respect. My understanding was that you made the recommendation, and it's in the minutes, but that the Chair's response was to thank you for your comments, not that it was debated or agreed.
I didn't quite say, I was probably having poetic license there. But as you can say, you can't criticise a trier. So I was trying on this occasion to try and get it through. But I'm more than happy to support Councillor Johnston's recommendation that we seek additional time for an interim report and a fuller report to cover all the issues raised. So if you propose that,
I'll propose that.
And I'll take that. I'll second that. Are we happy to do that?
Okay.
I did try. I'm sure we could have passed that. No. Just had some update on that from Mr. Anderson, that when the surveys go out to the parish councils, it was agreed that we will try and get members to promote that and get as much response to those surveys as well. So again, I think we've got this as a potential standing item on the minutes on the thing at the moment, update on task and finish groups anyway. So if we keep on emphasising that, we'll have this decision in the minutes, and also that we are trying to encourage people when the survey goes out to respond to it and get a pretty comprehensive response back. So thank you for that. Right then, item number 8, the Cabinet meeting. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items to discuss. And I'm proposing just to do them in the order they're printed, unless anybody has a burning desire to change the order? Yeah. And the good news is we've got Mr. Nicholson, Sean Nicholson, who's been able to assist us or advise on the SIL allocation spend. And if you look on the Cabinet report, it's pages 137 to 196. So, right, so, yeah, so Mr. Perks, do you want to introduce? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to give some sort of context to the report to get us going. Under a previous decision, we'd approved a long list of 22 infrastructure projects that we were looking to fund through SIL, should it be available. As part of this process, Sean and his team wrote to those 22 identified projects that had been previously approved to see whether they were in a position to proceed in this cycle of SIL. 15 of those respondents came back, and using the approved scoring method that was approved at the same time as the 22 projects were sort of allocated, we have scored the projects. Sean will give you more detail on this if you should need it. And the money we have available is set out in paragraph 1.2 of the report. It's just shy of 2 million. And the projects have been scored under the approved methodology, and the top ones are being proposed to be funded through SIL this year. So that's the method and the background to it. So feel free to debate.
Brilliant. Councillor Keithley, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Mr. Perks, could you just clarify the methodology? Did you just say that it was under the previous methodology or the revised methodology which is just brought in for this round of SIL project applications? I was just a bit confused by what you said.
Okay. No, it was the revised methodology that was agreed for this round of SIL.
Thank you, that's good. We'll go on to talk about that revised methodology, I'm sure. Thanks.
Do you want to ask a question about the revised methodology?
No, I just wanted to comment that it was significantly better than the previous methodology.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm saying I think it was one that we had this debate before, didn't we? And I think it. I know this is of particular interest to our committee, SIL allocations, and I think we've had positive contributions to the process, I would say so, and you led that in a lot of occasions. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and just to add, that anyone putting forward an application for SIL for a project in their local community would be able to see now a much more transparent process, and also a link to the allocation of SIL where development has got an influence on communities, and that is really important to get across. So I'm just grateful for that. I welcome this new methodology.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Who wants to? Mr. Nicholson, how about giving us some more information how you felt the process went, how people were engaged in the process from outside of working with partners and parish councils, etc. I noticed schools. I noticed there's particularly flooding, etc. How was that engagement done? Do you think they've bought into the process? Because obviously, when there's money involved, I think sometimes people are more engaged than on other occasions, more focused, shall we say. So I just wondered what your thoughts and comments were on it, please.
Yeah, I think going back to the earlier comments, the list of projects that we approached stakeholders on, that list had been agreed and included in the previous infrastructure list. So those 22 projects that were referred to. So that list had been developed through some sort of initial discussion with stakeholders to identify potential projects, also through a review of the existing infrastructure delivery plan, the existing evidence base for the core strategy, and the emerging evidence base for the South Warwickshire local plan, and talking to the people within departments. So the 22 projects that were when we approached them, they were always sort of they were bought into the system by default, because if it wasn't suitable for SIL, or an appropriate stage in the process, then we didn't pursue it. Of the 22 that were shortlisted, Appendix 1 sort of summarises where they're at. So some of them, once we got into more discussions on specific projects, it became apparent that although they're an appropriate project to be on the infrastructure list, they weren't quite at an advanced enough stage for an application to be submitted this year. But we're suggesting that they're retained on the list for future consideration. I think the engagement process was helpful. The application process, the methodology, as you say, the questions were new. I think there is scope to refine some of those and learn from the lessons of going through this first stage. And happy to consider any other suggestions in terms of how we improve the process going forward as well. But I think hopefully it has been successful. Obviously, the pot of money is insufficient to fund all these projects. They're all good projects. They're all on the infrastructure list. They would all make a great contribution to their communities. But unfortunately, the pot isn't big enough to support all of them in one go. So I think they're my main reflections.
Right, Councillor Rice, please. Then Councillor Wallyhogan, please.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned that there was possibility of refinement of the questions, and I wondered what in particular you were referring to. What refinements would you like to see made before this process is repeated next year?
I think it's just some of the. It's not necessarily the questions relating to the projects. It's more the context. So some of the questions that we would use ourselves to decide which projects should be given priority. I think they're the ones that need to be finessed. We want to avoid a situation where we're sort of the projects that will do well are smaller projects that can be delivered quickly, that already that have some match funding as well, and they're going to be fairly simple to introduce. So we need to be careful that some of the bigger projects that are equally critical aren't sort of getting pushed back, if you like, because the scoring is sort of central to selection. There are some of the questions that could be just clarified in terms of what we're trying to get out of applicants as well. But it's sort of tweaking rather than anything too dramatic.
Right, I've got Councillor Wallyhogan, then Councillor Keithley. No? So Councillor Wallyhogan, please.
Yes, thank you. You mentioned match funding from some of the organisations listed here. I wonder if, I may have missed it, but is there anywhere within this document before us that demonstrates how much funding the organisation is willing to put in? I'm thinking particularly of Stratford Town Council for cemetery space, and we know that Stratford Town Council has its own income streams, etc., and money. Thank you.
So each of the applications where there is match funding proposed, that's set out in the application. I can see a good something we could do for next year would be to identify as part of the table if the project includes match funding and what the amount of that is. I think that's a good idea. And in terms of the town council, you're right. They have got their own SIL funding as well. I think the way to look at this is that if we support them on a particular project, that's then freeing up the town council to spend its local SIL on sort of smaller scale projects as well. So there's a benefit in that respect.
Do I follow up, Councillor Wallyhogan, please?
I was thinking more globally of the reserves that the Stratford Town Council has anyway, but they don't just have to rely on the SIL monies that are made available through projects, but perhaps that's a freedom of information request coming down the line there. But thank you for that. I do think match funding details would be useful to have moving forward. Thank you.
Brilliant. Councillor Keithley, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thank you, Sean. It's very good, I think. Good job there. Just a comment really on some of the bigger projects. Sean just mentioned the problem is, well, not the problem, but the issue, if you like, is that the smaller deliverable projects are likely to get funded first because there isn't enough SIL to go around. And some of these larger projects, they're never going to be funded by SIL. To be honest, there's never going to be enough SIL to fund education and stuff like that. That's got to come through developer-led contributions through legal agreements, in my opinion. So I think we're on the right sort of track. In terms of grant funding from the likes of town councils, just in response to Councillor Wally Hoggins' question, I think there are probably limits on grants that are allowed to be given from town councils to projects. So there's probably a cap limit. It's quite low, actually, if I remember rightly from my time. SIL, as Sean said, is better spent from parish and town councils on things that are very local, so people can see. And it's only a small percentage of the SIL that they receive anyway, relatively, unless they've got power of competence, in which case they get 25%. Okay, thank you.
I've got a couple of questions, but I'm willing to wait if somebody else wants to come in. No? Comments and questions. I think it's good that you are keeping some on board for next year. I think that's good, but again, playing devil's advocate, how long do we keep them on board for? Because sometimes it might be raising expectations unnecessarily because we wouldn't be able to go through. Councillor Keithley was on the same page as me regarding the funding. We're likely to be doing smaller items within the budget rather than one big item that would take all the budget. And I can, there's pros and cons in that, but I can understand why that's happening. So, again, do we need to be more realistic when we are speaking? And again, taking on your point, Councillor Keithley, realistic when we're seeking bids, etc., that we are limited what we can do unless there's significant partner funding or match funding or funding from elsewhere. It might not go ahead, particularly in the near future. And then the point about Councillor Hoggins' point about the match funding as part of the table, that's fine. And again, whether we have a map of where the actual funding is going to be spent, just in case, are parts of other parts of the district not applying? They probably are, but again, if we have the information, where I wouldn't say have a map for where people have applied from, but whether some map of or some indication of where we're getting the applications from. Is it all parts of the district, or is one part of the district applying more than the others? And if so, why is that? Have they got the time? Have they got the resources to invest into these bids? So it's just a thought, because I do think that the SIL allocations, if possible, should be spent in all parts of the district. So just whether there's any barriers for doing that. Councillor Keith, I can see you might not necessarily agree with all my comments there, but if you want to come in, then I'll get Mr Nicholson to come back.
Well, I think the new scoring system deals with that issue of distribution across the district, okay? It's a much better distribution now, and based on those scores. But I do get the point. I do agree with you that I think in some areas, resources might not be there in order to support the applications in the first place. And maybe there's a bit more we can do to try and help all the parish councils in the district to come forward with things. I think that is a reasonably relevant point, but I'm disagreeing with you on the other one, because I think the scoring process that Sean's now using has dealt with the distribution issue. We don't need to produce a map showing where the projects are that have been funded.
I'm going to say take that point on board. I think perhaps it's made clearer as part of the introduction that, because I'd get residents who say, oh, Stratford, they all spend the money in the West, etc. And therefore, if we made it clear as part of the report, the allocation process takes into account I was going to say regional area differences, that's taken into account, so no bias is there. So if we just made that clearer that the scoring process is robust, and we are trying to that idea has been tackled. So it's just so my residents, some out in the east are saying, just so we can tackle that point. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Can I just come back on that one? We've got a parish forum lined up, which Councillor Gist leads. Now, I think the agenda for that is already probably a bit too busy, but, explaining how SIL is calculated and how it's spread around is something that we might be able to have a word about at some point on a parish forum, because it's those organisations that are potentially critical about what all the money goes here, not here. We just need to explain how that's done. So I'll pick that up with Councillor Gist at a later time.
So if it's part of our feedback to Cabinet, are you happy that we request that the parish forum, via Councillor Gist and yourself, explain the transparency of the process?
That's fine. Just say that, this is an area we need to publicise, because there's quite a lot of money coming out. SIL comes in from housing developments, and we can explain through the agenda of the parish forum at some point how this is now managed and how the distribution of the SIL funds is allocated. So we can pick. I mean, I'm speaking sort of as the parish champion here, but Councillor Gist runs that parish forum meeting, so I'll discuss it with Councillor Gist.
Thank you for that. Councillor Rice, please.
At the risk of going over ground we've already covered, playing devil's advocate, I would say, looking at those figures, that if you have a project over £500,000, you are unlikely to get it funded by SIL. Is that just coincidental, or is it a factor of there only being 2 million in the pot to start with?
I think that a sort of important context is in an ideal world, so once we've got the South Warwickshire local plan adopted, that will include an infrastructure delivery plan, and it will include a list of projects that we need to deliver, whether it be through Section 106 SIL or a combination of those. I think once we've got that certainty, then those £500,000 or those bigger projects, we should be in a position where we can say, right, we're reserving funds over 5 years or whatever to make sure that happens. We're sort of backfilling at the moment in terms of looking at what's in the existing IDP, etc., and moving to this system sort of moved from one where there was an open application process to one where the council are focusing on specific areas, reflecting those areas that have experienced significant development in recent years, and trying to identify projects that will help meet needs there. In terms of the larger projects in the short term, I think one of the things that we might be able to do is encourage people to break the project down if there's scope for doing something early on that will sort of help get it established, or even help attract other funding, and thinking how if that would be appropriate. Again, on the understanding that being on the infrastructure list doesn't guarantee additional funding, but that might be another way of helping those bigger schemes to come to fruition, helping them get planning permission, for example.
Thank you for that, Councillor Rice. Any other questions? No? Like I say, I think a lot of it is self-explanatory, so you haven't got too many questions, but I think we've given you some food for thought about things, for refinements, particularly about raising expectations, particularly about projects over £500,000, explaining the process. Again, we are aware of the refined process that's improved it significantly, but again, maybe potentially in the future we still refine it and still advertise what we're doing. And I think that working with Councillor Gist and Councillor Keithy to do with the Parish Partner Forum, again, we get the process out in the open, so we are clear, and it prevents questions of why are you spending money there, we want it and we deserve it sort of thing. And it shows there's a transparent scoring, independent scoring process. So I'm happy to propose that we put those points to Cabinet on Monday as part of our feedback, and are generally supportive of the process. So any other comments before we're in agreement with that? Thank you. Next item is this SDC, Stratford-on-Avon District Council Prevent Policy. It is quite pertinent. Obviously, we've got the various portfolio holders, one from County and one from Earlier and one from Stratford to do with our prevent policy. And I will just look at pages on. It is on page 27 to 44 on the agenda for the Cabinet on Monday. Councillor Gist, I can see you. You're putting it on then. Come on, we're getting our money's worth today, Councillor Gist, you know. We'll get the buy one, get one free from you today, so I'm sure Councillor Curtis would see value for money from there with his resources hat on. Page 27 to 44 on the Cabinet, item number 5. This is, so while you're getting ready, this is a policy that the Council has to adopt as part of our duties as an organisation under Prevent. I know the Council works very closely with the County Council on this, and Prevent Officer Mr Thomas, who's done many excellent presentations to here and training online as well. So hopefully I've given enough time for Councillor Gist to come in and see what she wants to add on that. But I do think we have to emphasise how important it is. So if you could just emphasise that for us, please.
Yeah, I mean, there's new Home Office Prevent guidance. Sorry. And we have a duty under Prevent, obviously, to work. It's under the Counter-Terrorism and Security Act, and this it basically it should be following the law and the guidance. It demonstrates what we do. We have to work with partners because it's obviously so complicated. I think most members have had some training with Jeff Thomas at County, which probably terrified all of us. I can answer any questions.
What I will do as well is I'll bring the monitoring officer. I think it comes under role as well to add some additional pertinent points as always. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our portfolio holder. So just to embellish a little bit more, so this Prevent policy is born out of the legislation, as you've heard from the portfolio holder, around counter-terrorism. And you may be asking, why now for a Prevent policy locally? The reason is because the guidance was only issued very recently to local areas such as this as to what would be expected to go into such a policy. In terms of governance, it's led by the principal council area authority. So if you like, the feed through is clearly the police, but from central government into Warwickshire County Council, and they wear a particular hat, and the hat that they wear is as the steering partner for the Prevent policy locally. So that means that they work very closely with the councils in the area to ensure that we have a plan to prevent. And you may have seen reference in the papers to something called the Channel Panel in Part 4 and Para 5 of the report, which is in effect the main authority across Warwickshire feeding information through to the the local prevent partnership councils to ensure that actions are taken forward as within the policy. So if I may, I'm just going to flick to the relevant page so that you can understand a little bit more about what I'm referring to. So under the prevent policy, there is reference to 4.2, the local risk assessment, and 4.5, governance oversight, and 4.8, the channel panel. I wasn't going to read the whole of it, but the idea is that the channel panel chair would update each prevent steering group meeting with an overview of the current caseload and issues that need to be addressed, for instance, on which we would then act. So the policy that's drafted then builds, if you like, Stratford District Council's governance process, which would be to identify who sits on the steering board for Warwickshire Partnership. And within that, the reference is to myself and also Sam Slemensek, who's the Community Safety Manager, with a duty to report to our portfolio holder and into yourselves on any major issues where we need to. So that's some of the background to this, but the urgency and seriousness of it you have read for yourselves, and I don't think I need to add anything more about how serious and important this is in this climate. I'm just pausing just to see if the Deputy Chief Exec wants to add anything further, having looked at the papers as well.
No, the only thing I would probably just sort of add is it's one of the, you'll see in paragraph 1.1.2 that there are sort of 4 areas where the country seeks to sort of reduce the impact of terrorism. This is in the prevent agenda, which is essentially, it used to be referred to as stopping radicalisation, but it's stopping people becoming inclined to support terrorism. And it's in that area this policy works, but I think everything else has been set out.
Yep, please.
There are 2 recommendations for the report, and one of them, as you can imagine, is necessary because this is a changing dynamic, I'm going to say. So it allows for me to have a delegation to make changes in real time, depending on what comes out of the centre or locally from Warwickshire.
Yeah, I'm going to say I think it is. Councillor Johnson, go on, you come in before
I got a question about what the channel panel was, and I just wonder if it'd be helpful if we included at the end a sort of glossary of names and titles of the various groups so we understand what they do and who the district council rep feeding into them, because I did get a bit lost on partnership boards and channel panels.
I don't know if what the portfolio holder wanted to add.
No, I agree, Councillor Johnson. I think that's a good idea because it is community safety, baffling array of different things. I think that would be helpful, yes, if the monitoring officer's happy with that.
Yeah, it is, you know, from my experience, there's lots of different acronyms. It's even worse than the fire service. So I think anything that could make it easier to read it is fine. Councillor Wally Hoggins, please.
Yes, it's just to thank the portfolio holder and the lead officer for this document. It is regrettable that we need such things, but this seems to me to be a very sensible document that we can move forward with. I particularly think that allowing the monitoring officer to make the amendments as we go along is a really sensible and good idea. So thank you very much indeed for this.
Yeah, Councillor Keithley.
Thank you. Sorry, I thought you had somebody before me. Thank you, Chair. Just to say, yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's an excellent piece of work. And I wanted also to thank the portfolio holder and the monitoring officer for organising that Teams training. It was the 4th of September with Jeff Thomas. It was very good. Not everybody attended it. I would like to see people referring back to that. Was it available on recording or did we? I can't remember. We didn't, did we? So I wondered if maybe it's possible to run it again for those that missed it. And I just finally say that I thought Councillor Johnson's idea of a glossary of thank you, Chair. just coming out just on the end of my tongue. Glossary terms was an excellent idea because we can get lost a little bit in the definitions. Thanks.
Yeah, I totally agree. It is, again, we touched on the next meeting, the next full meeting rather than the special meeting. We've got Mr. Sumensek and councillors coming back. We've already mentioned about domestic abuse, and then obviously we can touch on prevent as well, and perhaps some details of things like hostile vehicle mitigation systems that roll off the tongue. Obviously, as a world-class warden. Yeah. Okay, Marcia, the monitoring officer, please. I demoted you by calling you a councillor there. I do apologise.
Absolutely fine, and I consider it a promotion. I was just going to say, in terms of what you referenced earlier about, I think it was a hostile vehicle, etc., etc. I would just simply say that any debate, and I'm sure you know as experienced councillors, given what we're dealing with, would have to be mindful of confidentiality. There's only so much that could be shared in an open public meeting.
Yeah, so I think we have mentioned that before, and I think there was some money in the budget to fund those in particular. And obviously it's part of the duties as well. So I think, yeah, we are got to be mindful of giving that information that could be used by people with malicious intent. Very good. I was going to say nefarious, but malicious intent is even better, Councillor Keithley. So I think that's really helpful, and fully endorse what was in the report. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda we will be looking at, so much paper, so little time, is the enforcement policy, and that comes under the monitoring officer. So you want to introduce that, please, Marcia?
Well, it comes under me as the officer, but also our portfolio holder as well, sort of thing. If you're happy for me to continue, I will. Okay. So in terms of this enforcement policy, what it's seeking to do is bring together almost a framework of all the enforcement policies that the council operates. And whilst it's best practice, that's not the only reason why we're doing it. We're doing it because it's required by law for transparency for our residents and also for us as the users of the scheme. And you'll see that on your desk is Appendix C, because whilst it's referred to in the bundle that was published, we published it as a supplemental, so apologies, it was missed off, but it's also part of that enforcement policy bundle. And this relates to building control, which was recently updated. In order to make sure that this was just right, we actually went across the relevant service areas who were required to consult with to make sure that we had the most up-to-date report about what and guidance about what their enforcement policy and process is. And what I'm delighted to say is for each of those service areas, it all started with what we're required to do first, which is to try and seek compromise and a way forward. We don't just boulder straight into enforcement in the strictest sense, which might mean a process through to the courts. And you'll see from the report that this was last reviewed back in 2021, which is why it's timely now that we review and make sure it's up to date for our residents so that they know how we'll deal with matters going forward. Now, I should just clarify, there are some appendices to this report that might yet be the subject of further review, including the planning enforcement process and how they deal with their enforcement processes. Which is why, again, in terms of the recommendations, there is a reference to a delegation, again, so that I can make amendments as required, so that we're not in a position whereby it's not up to date and it can be updated in real time. That's all I wanted to say. I'm just going to pause for the portfolio holder.
Brilliant. Councillor Keith, do you want to come in? I've got a query as well. Yep, thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Marcia. That's useful. I hadn't actually spotted that, to be honest. That's also quite useful, the building control enforcement policy. I just wanted to have a look with you at one of the pages. When you do the summary, I think it was on page 46. So, item 4, which is consultation and members' comments. So my particular interest is in planning enforcement. Okay, and I think you know what I'm going to say, don't you? Planning enforcement, our policy, and particularly the performance of planning enforcement is always under scrutiny and always under criticism by everybody you speak to, really, sadly, because the perception is that perhaps it doesn't work as well as it might. That's a perception. But particularly consultees, town and parish councils, and they're consultees to planning applications, and we make decisions and we apply conditions to those, and conditions can get breached. What I want to ask is how we're going to make sure that we've had adequate consultation in respect of this planning enforcement policy with those organisations, because it's those organisations that need to understand how our planning enforcement works, how many cases it gets, how they triage and how they decide which to proceed with in the public interest or not. So as I read the report, I can't see that that group of organisations has been part of the consultation process. If you could help me with that, would be great.
I'm happy to help you with that, and if you like, Councillor Keithley. Yeah, what we're presenting today is an overarching sort of enforcement policy. You'll notice within that the planning enforcement protocol is set out in Appendix B, which would be reviewed in light of the overarching policy. So there is a working group in its early stages now looking at planning enforcement policy and whether the current sort of adopted policies, whether the current administration want to be and the current council want to be, and that will involve, it's a discretionary function and it's determined by the resources. You direct your resources as you see fit. So there will be a separate piece of work looking specifically at planning enforcement policies and how you want to imply them. It'll sit within this policy, but that sort of sits out with the decision today. So there will be a consultation as part of that when we review Appendix B.
So I'll probably be asking the same question, but if not come in, would that working group be seeking input from the towns and parish councils?
It would seem sensible to engage them in that process, yes.
Any other points? I've just got one other point, and it applies to the previous paper as well. Again, from quickness, efficiency point of view, I totally endorse the delegations to the monitoring officer. It would be good to see if there are any minor amendments that you've done under delegated powers. Would they go back to Cabinet first and then we would pick that up, or how would we be made aware of those, please?
Thank you, Chair. There is a delegation generally to myself within the Constitution around making amendments that are necessary or urgent for statutory purposes. But given if it were a matter that you were requesting specifically to be updated about, then I'm sure we could make that arrangement to bring that back. But as a general rule, there is already something in the Constitution that allows me to make those amendments so that we can keep compliant and if you like, stay flight of foot.
Yeah, I think it's just going back where there's like these amendments, whether they are potentially material or something we'd expressed an interest in at OSC, and how we got fed back on that.
If this is something that you have an express interest in, which is what I'm sensing, then of course I would update straight away.
Mr. Perks, please.
Yeah, it's always a balance with these things about expedience and then sort of more sort of deeper sort of policy issues. Because just by way of example here, we've got Appendix C, which is the building control enforcement policy, which is a nationally agreed document. If that changed, we'd want the monitoring officer just to be able to update the schedule so as we were compliant. If we were radically changing the way we were going to do planning enforcement, I very much doubt Marcy would wish to exercise a delegation to sign that off. We would, so there's an element of political awareness, but we would try and anything that involved in changing policy, we would bring back.
Councillor Littlewood, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say I'm a bit disappointed with the table under section 10 of Appendix B. At the workshop, there was a lot of debate. That's page 76 and 77. At the workshop, I found, and Councillor Coucher found, that we were both in agreement, that we were nervous of the fact of the use of the word desirable. It's a public document. People understand desirable means that, well, it would be nice, but honestly, we're not going to bother. And this is about conditions on planning applications, not developed in accordance with approved plans, breaches of conditions which seek to protect the amenity of neighbours, operational development or changes of which. These aren't desirable, these are necessary, or they would not have been put on by the planning officers in the first place. So I think that word is completely wrong. And I don't think any breach is minor, because if we consider this breach of a condition minor or otherwise, it devalues the use of conditions in a planning approval. And I really think it's a bit like speeding on the highway these days. Most people do it because they know there's not going to be anybody, they're unlucky to be caught. And that's what this is going to be viewed as. And I really think we need to look at that more carefully and make it more of a serious point. Breaches are breaches.
Do you want to come back in, Mr. Perkson, and I'll bring Councillor Keithley in?
Yes, I don't disagree with anything you've put forward, Councillor Littlewood. And what we have in this policy is a direct lift and shift of the 2021 planning enforcement policy, which was the last policy that the Council adopted, so that has to go forward into this protocol. I think, as I said to Councillor Keithley, alongside that, there is a review of this appendix being carried out that's picking up the points that you raise, and that debate can be had there, and then we can supplement the agreed planning enforcement policy into this policy through the delegation that we're suggesting to the monitoring officer. So it is being picked up, but at the moment this is moving the last established position of council into the formal policy.
Okay, I understand that, but it would be very good if we could be kept up to date at this committee, please.
Councillor Keithley, do you want to come in?
I do, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm pleased that Councillor Littlewood raised this issue of desirable, because I don't like it either. Minor would have been better. And that's something that can be looked at, I'm sure. But what I would add is that in the scheme of things, every building site could end up having a very minor breach in the conditions, or maybe the wall is a centimetre out. You know, and where do you draw a line on what is material and what is not material? So you have to have some sort of definition of what is more important and what is less important, and that's what this seeks to do. We had a debate, I remember, in that meeting about, well, why don't we employ people to go around checking every building site? And frankly, we don't have the resources to do that. So it's extremely difficult to monitor all development sites to make sure that they're precisely in accordance with the plans. And in any case, what difference would it probably make? So that's why we do have this hierarchy of critical, significant, and less critical, or more minor issues to deal with. We only have a certain resource to deploy to deal with them, and there is always the public interest test. If a ridge tile is a centimetre higher than it should have been on a plan, does it really matter?
I'll let Councillor Littlewood respond, and then I'll bring in Councillor Wally-Hoggins.
Yes, you're right. But that's not really what we're talking about here, is it? What we need to make sure is that conditions are specific and detailed. I don't think it matters if it's a centimetre or 5 centimetres different. That I agree with you, but that is not likely to raise an issue with the public, because they won't notice that that's the case. What this is, in the sense that this is guidance for officers, I'm quite happy with it. What I'm concerned about is how it's going to be perceived by members of the public, development companies, etc., etc. So I think we're probably in violent agreement on this, but I think there's a subtle difference between what I was trying to say and what you came back with. Thank you.
It's good to see you, Councillor Little, you, me and Councillor Keith are desirable. So I think that's quite important. We're all on the same hymn sheet there. I certainly think that, yeah, I think that it will be good that the working group that's been set up on this is aware of our thoughts and concerns, and I'm sure they will be I'm sure Mr Perks will pass them on. So I think that's quite pertinent. So I think that's quite good. But Councillor Keith...
Well, sorry, quickly, last word. I mean, this is exactly why, as Councillor Littlewood said, it's the optics of this, and the people that are looking at it that aren't within the Stratford District Council and the officers. It's why it's so important to make sure we've got effective consultation on this built into the process of developing it and agreeing it.
Yeah, and I think Mr Perks had, after my prompt, it said about the seeking input from towns and parish councils. I'll bring them on to an officer and then Councillor Wally-Hoggins, and then we'll draw a line.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to re-stress what the point of this is. It's bringing together what we currently have into one place so that the residents can access it. The content of it around the planning, I understand, and planning enforcement might be a concern, but as has already been explained, it is the subject of review, and that group that's been set up, that's been referenced by the Deputy Chief Exec, will hopefully pick up some of the points that you've referenced.
Brilliant, thank you. Councillor Wally-Hoggins, please.
Yes, I think we should remember that there is a cumulative effect when minor breaches happen, and it really causes quite a lot of annoyance with you know, neighbours and so forth. So you start off with one thing, then you add another one, and then it just goes on and on. And actually what that does is it really irritates, because if each time that is said, oh, well, it's just a minor thing. No, the cumulative effect of it then surely then ends up being quite significant. I'm also disappointed that the word desirable has ended up on this report, because we all went to a great deal of trouble to trick-track into this very room to talk about this policy, and for that to have been ignored and for it to still be here, I think it's highly unsatisfactory, and I'm a bit dischuffed about it if I'm perfectly honest. I also think that, and I don't know if the policy is the place for this to be, but I do think that as councillors, and certainly comes to us in another committee, I believe, that we absolutely need to know what the success criteria is with regard to enforcement. What are the targets? What are they doing against that? Now, this might not be the document for it, but let's not beat about the bush here. This is the thing that comes up at parish council meetings time and time again. Thank you.
Councillor Keith.
Sorry, I know you were concentrating on something else, but just in response to Councillor...
I can multitask, Councillor Keith. I can concentrate on several things.
Thank you very
come
much.
on in.
Okay, just to respond to Councillor Wally-Hoggins. The head of enforcement, the team leader in enforcement, did in fact come to a meeting not that long ago and put up a whole load of performance statistics in respect of the number of enforcement reports there had been, and the process of negotiating on remediation of those breaches, and also where enforcement action had taken place. So that data was presented not that long ago in a meeting in this chamber, actually, with John Careford and Claire Ainan.
Yeah, I'll just bring in Councillor Johnston, then Councillor Wally-Hoggins, and then if Mr Perks sums up.
I'm aware the review of this planning enforcement policy is underway. Do we have any idea of how long that process will take, and when can we see the 2025 version? One of the training sessions we had a few months ago made it very clear that district councillors, and I'm sure parish councillors, are the eyes and ears of the enforcement service. And I'd like to see some reflection of the activity that we can feed it. You know, if we see issues not being dealt with, that surely has to have some priority if we are to be the eyes and ears of the enforcement business.
Yeah, I think that's a notice. Fair point. I think we've got a note of that. I think that's a fair point. Councillor Wally Huggins, please.
Yes, I was at that meeting, Councillor Keithley, when we had the stats with John Cowford. But again, we still need to know what the targets are and what the success criteria is. But if this is a working process, then we just carry on waiting for something to change, I suppose. Thank you.
I'm going to say, obviously, Mr. Perks is involved in this, and he's making notes furiously about our concerns and being involved and seeking input from towns and parishes and some of the points that, all the points that we've put forward, and obviously it's going to be reviewed on a regular basis. So I think we're getting quite a bit of reassurance on my part from Mr. Perks being there. So I've built him up, so I'll let him sum up, and we'll draw a line under that one there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In fact, you've said a lot of what I was going to summarise. I was just going to reiterate that what we have in this sort of overarching enforcement policy is a lift and shift of the adopted 2021 planning enforcement policy. That's being reviewed. Please be assured your comments aren't being ignored. They're fed into that process, but that process isn't yet complete. I will get you a date for when that's due to be complete, because to be honest, I don't know. And the only other point I was going to make is that enforcement policy and setting the planning enforcement policy is a matter for Cabinet and therefore overview and scrutiny committee. The reporting of enforcement activity actually goes into the regulatory committee, so there's probably more of that going in. Whilst it doesn't come through here, we do have a separate mechanism for that, so hopefully that's useful to you.
I need to leave, I'm sorry, but thank you very much, everybody.
No, thank you. But you didn't have to apologise because you've already read, and safe journey. Thank you. Next item is the scrutiny policy that did come and we deferred. The strategic risk. Strategic risk. That was what I was looking at earlier. Again, the strategic risk one, I think it is important. The risks that are coming to the council, and we need to be monitoring those, looking on the review on a regular basis, and again, the accountant coming out and with me and the audit principles. I think it's important we look at this, or would probably start off that one of the biggest risks, and we've touched about it before in different ways, is relating to, if I can find the page, it relates to staffing. I think the risk level was 12, if I remember rightly, recruitment and retention of staff. And I can't find the right page now because it's...
121.
Yep, just got there. So it does seem to be the biggest risk that we are facing at the moment. I would just like to make sure we flag it. I see we've got some existing actions, and I just wondered whether Mr. Perks would be able to tell us more about how we are trying to manage this, particularly in the light of local government reorganisation, potentially impacting on recruitment and retention of staff. So that was my first question, and if anybody else has got any questions, I'm more than happy.
As things stand, staff retention recruitment isn't too bad. I think that will get more challenging as we get further along the LGR process. We have challenges in specific areas, particularly in professional services, sort of lawyers, planners. We're all right for environmental health and officers at the moment, but we just try and use sort of innovative ways of trying to get people in here. It's a nice place to work. We've adopted a staff strategy that sort of sets out sort of the benefits. We use agencies where we need to, but we try and avoid that for sort of a cost basis, but we're aware that we need to keep services running. And those are the sort of techniques that we're using at the moment. We have a relatively stable staff at the minute, but we are struggling in some areas, and we're doing what we can to fill those.
Right. Any other questions? I've got another one before I move on. Page 123, South Yorkshire Local Plan and Land Supply. Looking at the risk level and the current net risk being 6, which is obviously half of the one relating to staffing. I read an article recently from the leader of Warwick District Council, and you're thinking, oh, why Warwick District Council? But we are doing a joint plan with them. And he was explaining the challenges regarding meeting the timetable around the South Warwickshire local plan. We all know as part of the 5-year housing and land supply shortfall, we've got to do things in the short term before the South Warwickshire local plan starts to gather more traction and more weight and can be a significant factor in the 5-year housing and land supply and planning applications. I'm just concerned, is the risk level it's in the papers, does that reflect the current risk level in light of the comments from the leader of Warwick District Council?
I think that's a fair comment I can take back, Chairman. The risk is around the development of the South Warwickshire local plan, which is still sort of broadly on programme, and we're hoping to complete by the end of next year. The Reg 19 consultation will be out early next year, and there is still a commitment from both councils to do that. It has been made more challenging with the 5-year local 5-year housing land supply situation, and I'm very happy to take that back to our management team. We can reconsider that, because I think that whether that risk is fully summed up in there, I think it's a fair comment. Yeah, I'm happy to review that.
Could you make a note of that, Howard? It was a fair comment from the chair. So we're all happy with that one. Any other questions on the strategic risks? I think we've covered the 2 significant ones. And I'm more than happy that we move on as long as the committee is. The next one is the scrutiny protocol. Marcia, this was your paper. Would you be willing to just briefly introduce it for us, please?
Again, thank you, Chair. So the scrutiny protocol is as it reads on the tin, in the sense that it's not a requirement under law, but it is best practice led by the government. And so what we're seeking to do is not change the Constitution. The Constitution stays exactly the same. What we're doing is building in some of the best practice suggested by the guidance from the Centre for Scrutiny and Good Governance, as well as the guidance from central government on how an essential committee like yours should work closely with the rest of the council, and in particular Cabinet. So what is before you is hopefully something that builds on the bones of what's already in the Constitution, but does not change what's in the Constitution at all. I wasn't going to say more than that, but more than happy to take any questions and respond on the proposed amendment that has been circulated.
Thank you, Monson Officer, and apologies for being calling you by your first name, so I do apologise for that. Just slips out, but I'm sure you're not offended on this occasion, or you'll throw something at me next time. So I do apologise for that. Who wants to start on this one? Any comments? I know there's an amendment that's been circulated to the protocol. Would somebody? Councillor Littlewood, please.
Thank you. Actually, the answer to both your questions, yes, I have a question with regard to report specifically 3.3, but that also refers to amendment. And I wanted clarification from the monitoring officer, if possible, please, with regards to the constitutional position of 3.3 and where does it arise from and be embedded in the Constitution.
Okay. So 3.3 references what representations are largely made at Cabinet. In terms of the Cabinet and representation in the Constitution, it refers to the chair attending and making representations about any recommendations that might arise from discussions at the OSC committee. So that's what it says in there. And if I may, Chair, the reason why I said I wanted to respond on the paper that's been suggested with the proposed amendment, it causes me some concern regarding para 3.3, because whilst there is every right that that whatever the report is from this committee goes to Cabinet as agreed by yourselves, it shouldn't fetter your right as the chair under the Constitution to make representations.
Yeah. So that's what's alongside as well. Do you want to come back, Mr. Perks? Yeah, just so.
I was just clarifying for my own peace of mind, but I suppose everybody can hear what I was thinking. That's why it says alongside as well as in, because there will be a report written, but as the chair of the committee, you have the right under the Constitution to speak at OSC, so it has to be alongside, because that would fetter your discretion otherwise. Sorry, it's an arcane point, but it was interesting to me.
And just following up on that point, because it is constitutional that the chair has a right to make representations, which is in fact also endorsed by the leader of the council, it would be inappropriate of me to say anything other than what I've just said, which is that it would be wrong to delete alongside to allow for the chair to have their right to make representations as well.
Thank you. That's very clear and confirms my thinking in the first place. And that leads on to the amendments. And I propose under those circumstances, your comments, that we reject the proposed amendment for paragraph 3.3 as written in the sheet.
Councillor Wiley, I'll bring them on to an officer in, then Councillor Wiley Hoggins, then Councillor John.
So just to clarify, the discussion that I was referencing, which you've kindly all heard, was relating to the first sentence, 3.3 delete alongside, replace within. But there's a second sentence which perhaps you might need to debate as the politicians in the room.
Is that the para 4.3 or the second?
Add the report will be a record of the discussion at OSC. Yeah. Or do you think it's related? It's a matter for you.
My feeling, if I may, Chair, is, and how I read it, was it already is a record and therefore doesn't need amendment.
Councillor Wiley Hoggins, then Councillor Johnson, please.
Yes, I'm just seconding Councillor Littlewood's proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson, please.
I would still wish to propose that Cabinet consider these proposals. I don't then understand why the change of day and all the other arrangements that were introduced if they can't be reflected in Cabinet. And I would wish to propose both these resolutions, and I'd be grateful if we could find someone who might second it.
I'll just bring them on to an officer in, please.
Just to be clear for the minutes, for Howard in particular, we're still on para 3.3. I don't think we've yet moved to 4.3. So at 3.3, I think I understand that Councillor Littlewood and Councillor Wally Hoggins have made their position clear, and Councillor Johnson, your reference to 3.3 is just so that we're clear. That's it.
Two recommendations. Just for clarity, if we split this into three recommendations, so we say we're still on number one.
Okay.
Right. Shall I?
Yeah,
I'm quite happy to do it.
Or whoever, I don't mind.
Okay. So I don't want there to be any confusion. So at 3.3, we said there were two parts to that particular point. And at 3.3 first sentence, I have understood that Councillor Littlewood and Councillor Wally Hoggins have taken a view on the second sentence in that same paragraph, which would be almost recommendation 2, which is to add the report will be a record of the discussion at OSC. Was there a proposer and seconder for that, or are you saying that they're linked?
I'm very confused here because I can only see one sentence in 3.3.
Fair enough.
So I actually need us to take a pause here, and I'm quite capable of putting a full stop in here, but this actually really matters.
Mr. Perkson?
Shall I read out what I think is happening? If we look at the amendment sheet, there are two proposals to amend paragraph 3.3, which is recorded on page 20. The first is to replace the word alongside with in, and the monitoring officer's advice on that is that the Constitution allows the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to speak, and by changing it for alongside to in, that would mean he could only present the report and they couldn't speak, so that we can't carry. The second recommendation in there is appending somewhere in the sentence, the report will be a record of the discussion at OSC, which would have to be incorporated sometime into paragraph 3.3. And listening to the discussion so far, we think that the original paragraph 3.3 implies that. There's no reason constitutionally why you couldn't do that if you feel strongly as a committee, but I felt that the feeling of the meeting was that was implied. And then the third recommendation, which we haven't got onto, is the amendment to paragraph 4.3, which we haven't had any debate about yet. Does that clear up what we're talking about?
Yeah. Councillor Rice, please. Then we'll...
Just to help me understand what we're talking about here, we are arguing, or at least discussing, or putting forward, the wording at the moment, as I understand it, says matters arising, and we're talking about will be a record of the discussion, and whether those two are mutually exclusive or exactly the same thing. Okay.
Monitoring officer, please. I'll just bring the monitoring officer in, and then I've got Councillor Litherwood, then I'll bring you back in, Councillor Wally-Hoggins.
I'm quite happy I can wait my turn.
Councillor Wally-Hoggins, then, if you can come in, then...
Yeah, so I'm seeking clarification then from the proposer as to why he wishes to limit the presentations to a written report only.
Would you like to reply to that, Councillor Johnston?
I don't see any reason why the chair can't add comments as he wishes, but the record of the discussion at OSC is in the written report, and not any additional comments are the chair's comments.
I would disagree, because the written report contains the items we're talking about that refer to Cabinet. It doesn't contain all the other things that we discussed at OSC. Councillor Giss, do you want to come in, please?
All I wanted to say was there's no intention, certainly politically, to silence anyone from saying anything that they want to say. So I think all it should be is clarity in a written report, and then if the chair has some additional comments that would be helpful to Cabinet, then, you know, why would we have an issue with that?
Yeah, again, I've felt my role, I've taken it seriously to be a critical friend at Cabinet, and the leader, I believe, has welcomed it. And I don't think I've received hardly any criticism. Might be a criticism of the odd bad pun, which I can see Councillor Curtis nodding in the background there. But I think I've acted reasonably, I've been constructive and a critical friend. So I felt there was no need to change 3.3. In fact, the way I took it, it was the amendment was limiting the ability to be a critical friend. So I think the amendment is superfluous. Yeah. Councillor Giss, do you want to come back in? Councillor Curtis, do you want to approach the table as well?
I think after the Deputy Chief Executive explanation about alongside, I understand that. That's not the intention of what's drafted here. I don't understand really why the report will be a record of the discussion at OSC can't stay in, because it should be extant, and just to state it is stating what it is, isn't it? But it's not a matter for me right now, it's a matter for the committee. Just have to say that, because so I don't want to overstep what I should be or shouldn't be saying.
Thank you, Mountain Officer.
I just wanted to come in and just say that it's really important that you as politicians have this debate, but as monitoring officer, I do have to state that we're talking about the responsibility of the chair in making representations, but it needs to be done so it doesn't present as a pointed attack at what the current chair is doing.
Councillor Wally-Hawkins, I don't think the original report implies that whatsoever, so I think I've got concerns about the amendment, grave concerns, to be honest. But I'll bring Councillor Wally-Hawkins in.
I don't think this amendment is required, and I'm utterly baffled by the fact that this amendment has been proposed. We've got a cabinet member here who's, I think, perfectly happy for the word alongside to remain in there. Do you understand why we're changing it to there's a proposal for in? Because
I'm happy that there is no intention at all to stop the chair making representations to cabinet. Very happy with that. And if changing it to in does that, then we shouldn't be doing that. That's fine.
I'll leave the two to argue on this.
I'm really sorry. I just need to come back in and restate what I said at the beginning. There's something in the Constitution that makes it very clear that the chair already has a right to have representation, and so we can't look to change that within this protocol.
Councillor Little, do you want to come in?
Thank you for that clarification, and that's where we're starting from. I think I've made the proposal that the amendment to 3.3, as written in the proposal, in the amendment, be ignored totally. I don't see the significance of the report will be record of the discussion at OSC. I have no problem if they want to put that in there, but it's just more work on top of what we're already doing, and I'm not clear that it adds anything to 3.3 in the scrutiny protocol. What I am clear of is that deleting alongside, and I hear we have agreement that deleting alongside and replacing with in, it would be non-constitutional in effect.
Yeah,
and therefore, I stick with my proposal that should be not, the amendment should be thrown out.
I don't think we need to have a proposal, because if it's non-constitutional, we shouldn't be putting it forward as OSC. Councillor Orcott, please.
Thank you, Chair. My proposal would be that to add in, the report will be a record of the discussion at OSC. That's the proposal. I want that line added in. That would be my proposal, please.
You can accept the proposal. We've got a second of that? Yeah. I'm going to say my thoughts on... Councillor, could you just turn your mic off, please? My thoughts on the matter is that the report is produced by Mr Allison. It's sense-checked, I believe, by the monitoring officer and the Deputy Chief Exec. And if the report is saying things that are not happening and are not true, I think we're questioning the integrity of the three officers on this top table, and I find that shocking.
We do too.
I think that's a little bit of an overstatement of what we're trying to achieve. No one is trying to silence you, but it'll be up to the leader at Cabinet to invite you to speak and say whatever it is you want to say.
So therefore, this amendment is superfluous. Anyway, the way I've read it, and other people are reading it, is it's coming across that I just do a written report. And I think that's not... No, not in your bit, Councillor Gist. I've got no problem with the original protocol, and I was happy for it to go to the last Cabinet meeting. But the way I'm reading this, the replacement of in a written report instead of alongside, I think that 3.3 encapsulates what we do, and I think the amendment is unnecessary. I would agree with the amendment on paragraph 4.3. That's not a problem. I've got no issues with that at all. But I think changing paragraph 3.3 from its original text is superfluous, unnecessary, and potentially can be perceived as trying to mute what the chair says.
I wonder if the Lib Dems perhaps would like to have a small adjournment so they can discuss this, because I'm being very kind to you when I say this, that actually, politically speaking, with political goggles on, this is not going to look, the gods will not shine on you kindly if you persist in this amendment and don't withdraw it. Thank you.
Councillor Whittlord, and then I'll bring the monitoring officer in, please.
Just an observation, really, Chair. We've got to be very careful when making amendments and drafting any document, that it's done in such a way that those that were not present and in the future will read this and interpret it as it was intended to be interpreted. Therefore, the text has got to be very, very carefully crafted, and I think that anything that could be construed later on to shackle the role of the chair and freedom to inform Cabinet as a critical friend, perhaps, must be very, very, very carefully looked at. Thank you.
Councillor Rice, please.
Thank you, Chair. I should like the monitoring officer to give me her opinion as to whether matters arising and record of the discussion are tautological or in fact different, because matters arising would be, for me, different to a record of the discussion. A record of the discussion would perhaps put more of a context around matters arising. But I do wonder whether we are on a head of a pin at this point. And I would be grateful for the monitoring officer's opinion.
Thank you, Chair. So I believe I gave my opinion earlier on where the Chair's right to make representation sits within the Constitution, and that it's also supported by the Leader of the Council who sits as Chair. In terms of what you've said about tomato, it is rather like dancing on the head of a pin, as you quite rightly said. But I will say this, I've sat at enough of the Cabinet meetings for items to arise out of the meeting on which the Chair of OSC is also asked to comment. So it can be sometimes wider than what you have made as recommendations here.
I think that sums it up quite aptly, actually. Have we got any other comments before? Councillor Curtis, yes, I did call you forward, so thank you.
Thank you. If I can, I'm just looking at the Constitution, which is sword and shield. 14.1, reports from Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Once it has formed recommendations on proposals, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee will prepare a formal report and submit it to the Head of Paid Service for consideration by the Cabinet or the Council. And then further it says that once the Overview and Scrutiny Committee has completed its deliberations on any matter, it will forward a copy of its final report. So that must be, if it's to be forwarded, a written copy of its report.
I'll come back. We are doing that already, but the section that I'm referring to, which allows the OSC chair to make representations, quite separate. And I'm quite happy to send that to you outside of this meeting. So that's what I'm referring to.
Can I just clarify, if I may, with the monitoring officer, that it is at the discretion of the leader that the chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee can speak at Cabinet?
No, that's not what it says. That's not what it says.
Is it not?
It does say that the chair of OSC is invited to make representations or words to that effect, and I'm quite happy to send that to you all outside of this meeting. Haven't got it to hand now, but I'll send it to you.
Thank you for that clarification.
Right then. Right. I'm happy to propose that 4.3, the paper assessment will be made available to all members of the OSC after each meeting described in paragraph 2. I'm happy to support that. So I've got no issues with that. So happy to allow that one. I'm proposing that paragraph 3.3 is not needed, the amendments, because we're doing that already. And I've never had any feedback from the leader of the council who invites me to speak on OSC matters.
Chair, I'm happy to withdraw 3.3.
Okay, thank you. So the only amendment then will be the addition of paragraph 4.3.
And that's a sorry. For clarity, that's a recommendation to Cabinet to consider when they're sort of approving the parcel. So the written report that Howard will prepare and the Chairman will suggest on this item that amendment is included, and Cabinet will decide on that on Monday, and we'll make sure that they're informed of that prior to the debate.
Brilliant, thank you for that. The next two items are the revenue budget monitoring period 1 to 6 and capital budget monitoring periods 1 to 6. Obviously, we've got the portfolio holder here. Whether the portfolio holder present, oh, Mr. Perks, yeah. Mr. Perks, and then if you want to come in, yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, in the absence of Mr. Burrell, who just asked me to introduce these to you today, they're the standard updates that we have bi-monthly. For the up to the end of period 6, we're firstly considering the revenue position. So period 6 concluded on the 30th of September, and the recommendation to Cabinet is that they note the financial position, which is broadly positive. And there are some write-offs to be approved along in accordance with our standard protocols. So myself or Councillor Curtis will try and answer any questions that you may have.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Who wants to come in on that one? Councillor Wally Hoggins, please. Yeah.
Yes, I wonder if we might have a little bit of meat on the bones of section 6, page 200, please, of the employee expenses, showing an unfavourable variance of £725,479, please.
Page 200, I think. 6 point. Paragraph 6. Paragraph 6.1. Is that the one, Councillor Will Hoggins, please?
It's employee expenses, breakdown of expenditure by category, Appendix 2. But basically, how come we've got an unfavourable variance of nearly £750,000 to do with employee expenses, please?
Yeah, I think most of the explanation of that's in the second part of the sentence, which is caused by staffing costs funded from grants and earmarked reserves. So they're not sort of in the baseline revenue budget, but it's income that's either been released from earmarked reserves by previous decisions of the council, or staff that we're funding from external grants, for example, like the Rural Crime Officer is funded by a rural grant. It isn't baked into the revenue budget, but it's added to that, and that staff are paid for that. So there'll be there's a debit out, but a credit in to match it in the revenue account.
So we don't need to worry about it. No, all right, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Curtis, please.
I've got my regular weekly meeting with the Section 151 officer this afternoon. So what I will do is take any, rather than ad lib on the spot, I'm very happy to take any questions away and consult with Mr. Rowell this afternoon, and then at Cabinet next week, is it? Monday, yes. At Cabinet on Monday, I'll give full answers to any questions raised.
Right, yeah. And so we touched on the strategic risk register about staffing, was one of the issues that we've spoken about. I know there's a couple of unfavourable variances due to agency costs, etc. I think that was legal services was one of them. And then there's a favourable variance from salary savings from a vacant post. So it's almost a little bit of a double whammy, because if we've got vacancies, and I think the head of housing was saying about recruitment at previous meetings, if we got vacancies, we then potentially have to fill those vacancies with agency workers who are potentially paid at a different rate to our staff, which creates a variance. And also, if we have got vacancies that we aren't able to fill, then there's a potential impact on workloads and how we meet our customers' demands. So I think it's a flavour of things. I don't think there's any real major concern, but if you could note that and ask the Section 151 officer whether that's a trend or it's a one-off, and have we any real concerns about those, please?
Yeah, certainly. And I think we've had a number of discussions, obviously, with the local government reform. There are concerns about staff retention and recruitment, filling vacant posts. The use of agency staff isn't necessarily always a negative, and it may be in some instances that we need to recruit specialist staff for a specific task for a specific period of time. So I think it sometimes, part-time staff or temporary staff, consultants always have a bad name, but sometimes, we need to recruit a consultant for a specific purpose. But yeah, I'll take that up with Mr. Burrell this afternoon.
Yeah. I just need to bring something up briefly. We've quickly gone over the 3 hours. Can we just have a quick vote that you were happy to continue? Thank you. Hopefully it won't be too much longer. Thank you. Agreed. Yeah, I've just got a couple of added points on that. I think you're right, Councillor Curtis. Sometimes agency workers bring a fresh pair of eyes or a different perspective, so that there's always that issue as well. My only other one was 6.1.3 on page 200. Unfavourable variance of 125k, mainly due to a backlog of works on SDC infrastructure. I just wonder what the backlog of works were, and what the impact was, why it was causing this unfavourable variance, please.
I think it's work that was probably not carried out in previous years due to, oddly enough, a recruitment problem, trying to find a construction manager to supervise these works. So it's works that were probably budgeted in the previous years that weren't carried out, were carried forward as a saving. We're now actually delivering some of that work. So we're catching up with it's essentially catching up with the maintenance backlog.
I was very impressed the way you threw your voice there, Councillor Curtis.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realise that.
No problem. As long as I get the answer, that's fine. So I was only pulling your leg there, Mr. Perks.
As long as Councillor Curtis agrees with that answer, that's fine.
Absolutely.
Councillor Wally-Huggins, please.
Yeah, there's some staggering sums before us here that council funds, Appendix 4, 23,813,139 is held in earmarked reserves. There's another £9.5 million being held from external funding within our accounts. Can you please, which I think is just a phenomenal amount of money. However, can you explain to me, please, if the local government reorganisation, there's over £2 million there sitting for local government reorganisation. Has that amount of money been dictated to us by central government? And do those authorities that you seek to partner up with, have they also got that amount of money set to one side? Where has that figure come from, please?
I think the figure of £2 million is a reasonable estimate that's been suggested by the District Council's network as to sort of costs we might need to set aside because there will be a significant amount of programme management and the like as we transform to whatever the direction it is that goes. At the moment, it's a number we need to sort of refine, and as part of our sort of local government reorganisation programme, once we've got the submission, one of the things we need to do then is to start moving into how would we start to sort of make this reality, what would the programme look like, where are contracts and things, what are we amalgamating, so we will refine that figure as part of that process early next year is the plan.
Can I just add to that, Chair? That thank you, Chair. There are regular and frequent meetings of all the Section 151 officers from the 5 boroughs and districts and County Council. It's, as we all know, I mean, it is immensely complicated, just sorting out the finances. But I think, as Mr. Perks has just said, I think setting aside that budget or that reserve of 2 million, there is so much that we don't yet know about what the shape of local government reform is going to take. We won't know for another period of time, but we have adequate reserves at the moment. I think, fortunately, we are in a very strong financial position, probably in a stronger position than most of our neighbouring authorities. So I think it's prudent to put that money aside at the moment, and we'll see how much we actually need in due course.
Follow-up, Councillor Hoggins, please.
I suppose what I'm concerned about, and this might not be the right forum for this, however, what I'm concerned about is that the taxpayers of Stratford District Council are going to be subsidising the taxpayers from other neighbouring councils should we wish to amalgamate with them. And I think that's a really serious point for our taxpayers. Thank you.
And I think, yes, if I can just reply directly to that, and that's why this administration is recommending very strongly that we look for a North and South Warwickshire 2 unitary solution rather than that recommended by the County Council for a single unitary solution. And certainly I think the residents I've been speaking to in this district very much favour a South Warwickshire and a North Warwickshire for precisely the reason that Councillor Wally Hoggins has just outlined.
It is interesting. I've had some people speak to me about it, and like I say, about expressing concerns, and I think some people have expressed concerns to me about the debt that Warwick District Council has. So there are pros and cons and swings and roundabouts. So I think that we have to make sure we do all the due diligence, etc., and make sure we're making decisions on latest information about.
We're on the revenue budget.
Yeah, we're on the revenue budget, so yeah, moving swiftly on. I don't think we've got any other questions on. We didn't see that bit. Apologies to the monitoring officer. So yeah, we'll move swiftly on. Councillor Curtis, you led me astray there, so we'll share the blame equally on that one. Any councillor giving surname beginning with C, we're in trouble. So thank you. Any other questions on that? I think we've done quite a few, and we can move swiftly on to the capital expenditure ones, which is on page 213. If you want me, I can start with some questions or a question. I think just my main concern is that on page 214, table 2 on paragraph 1.3, actual and committed is approximately 20% of the 25-26 expenditure budget, whereas just doing a straight line budget of 6 months, 50%, we should have potentially be spending 50% of our budget. And we all know that expenditure doesn't spend in straight lines, and particularly in capital. Obviously, having the budget, it's advisable to try and spend it in the year that it's allocated for 2 reasons. One, we're going to be producing what we said we're going to do with the money as soon as possible, and 2, if it delays, then we've got the time value of inflation on that budget. So a pound today is worth probably 85p in 3 or 4 years' time. So we're going to have to provide additional resources. So my question is that are we ensuring that we are trying to progress capital schemes as quickly as possible within the time scale, and what processes are in place to mitigate any delays in terms of capital expenditure? Thank you.
I'll say yes to the first part. No, we are trying to progress the capital schemes that we've been directed as quickly as possible. We use a system of project management tools to ensure that that expenditure is carried out expediently as quickly as possible. You are right that inflation does degrade the value of money, but we have that money invested, so we're offsetting some of that with the interest that we're gaining on it. But inflation tends to outstrip returns. I would agree with you. So perhaps the 85p is a conservative estimate of it with a small c. Yeah, and we're using sort of project management tools to ensure that we get sort of things forward as quickly as we can. But we've always got to be mindful of making sure that we've got the scheme in the right place to proceed to mitigate sort of risks of taking half-baked schemes to market, and it's often more complicated than it initially seems. But yes, be assured that we are committed to getting the money out the door as quickly as we can.
To the Rice, please.
Yes, I'm interested in the nearly £5 million slippage from 24-25. I just wondered, how slippery is it? Is it slipping through 25, 24, 25, 25, 26?
Yeah, I haven't got the schedule of items with me. I would hope that we were catching some of it or it slipped away. But we can report the detail of that back to you outside the meeting, but unfortunately I can't give you a detailed response on that now.
I'm impressed, Councillor Rice, with your puns now. You're coming down to coming up to my level. Councillor Curtis, please.
Yes, on slippage, obviously it does happen, despite Tony's system of project management tools. You know, inevitably there is going to be slippage. Sometimes it seems greater than the reality, if you like, because it may be that a project, say Project A, we allocate the budget in 2024 of, say, £10 million. It may be that only a third of that project could be delivered in that year, so there will inevitably slippage into the following years, but if you like, that's planned slippage. We have been successful, though, I don't have the figure exactly, but three years or so ago, the slippage amount was around 12 to 13 million, so it has been reduced substantially since then. But as I say, some of it, if you like, is planned slippage. Maybe there should be two different categories for slippage, I don't know. But some, as I say, some is planned and some is events, dear boy events.
I think I'd just like to add on to that as well, is that we don't want to pass the message over that you've got to spend the money to avoid the slippage. We want you to spend the money wisely, in there to get best value. And if that means it's delayed for a couple of months, but you're providing far more outputs by doing that, we would like to see that as well. So I think that's not an unreasonable point.
And of course, as Mr. Perks will confirm, the new procurement rules are causing considerable delay, I think, as well, in some areas.
Questions? No? Brilliant. Thank you for that. I think you got away relatively lightly, but if you could pass those concerns over on both of the
and
papers
I'll
to the section 151
touch
office.
on the things raised in this committee when I present my report to Cabinet on Monday.
I'll look forward to seeing you there. Right then, the next item on the agenda should be the work plan, I believe, if I'm look at my agenda, because I've got about 17 pieces of paper here. It is the work plan. We have touched on the work plan. We're having a presentation. Councillor Gist has got a revolving chair here again at the next meeting. She obviously loves it that much, so that will be good. Councillor Johnston, please.
We've got the final report of the Budget Task and Finish Group in the programme, but we don't seem to have the establishment of the Budget Task and Finish Group. And I suggest we do that on the 26th of November.
Yeah, I've just been told it's going to be on the agenda for next time. So thank you for that. Any other comments on the work plan? No, good. I will take that as... Go on, Mr. Perks.
Just on the hydro scheme that I'm due to bring back to you, I just noticed on the 26th of November, we are exploring some other options on that, which I'm hoping to get the report sort of next week on. I can give you a report on where we are, if that would be useful to you, but it might not be a final recommendation, which is what I would have hoped, because it might still be a bit transient by then. So you can either push it back and have the final recommendation, or I can give you an update on the 26th.
Councillor Wally-Huggins, please.
Oh, let's have an update, please.
Okay.
With the hydro report, we were looking at income streams. And that's the only one to allow, I'm afraid, so I do, it hasn't been too bad. So that was really positive. No other things on the work plan. Item 10, urgent business. I've not received any urgent business that I need to discuss yet, so I declare the meeting closed at 13:19. Thank you.